Sonic the Hedgehog is dead.
Long live Sonic the Hedgehog. Well, hello and welcome to Triangle Square, the PlayStation podcast. I am your host, Brett Beck, and alongside me, back for episode 301, is the one and the only Mr. Chris Figs.
Hello.
Chris, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. How are you, Brett?
You got a full belly right now?
I do have a full belly right now.
Really rocking good. That Longhorn Steakhouse?
Oh, yeah. That medium rare, perfectly cooked steak.
Hey, you know, it's a gigantic steak. So yeah. I don't blame you for not getting it. But have you at least had the Outlaw ribeye?
I have not had the Outlaw, no.
It is incredible.
Yeah,
next time you go.
I'm not a big fatty steak guy.
Man, that's crazy because my wife used to be that way. She'd be like, sirloin's my go-to. Mm-hmm. And after a few trips of every time that she'd be like, how's your steak? She'd be like, it's good. And I'd try a bite and she'd try a bite of mine and she'd be like, oh my God, your steak's way better. And I'm like, it's that fat, baby.
Yeah.
It's that fat. It's where the flavor comes.
It makes it taste better, but I can't eat it. It grosses me out, like the texture.
Well, if you have an overly fatty steak, then sure. But if you have a decent cut, it should just be a little bit of fat to marbleize and give you that flavor.
Yeah.
Right?
But there's the ones with like the fat in it and all that. And like it makes it really good. But then like I personally am wasting like half the steak. So I'm like, I ain't eating that shit. And I'm not like going scavenging for it like a corn on the cob. So
no, the pieces that do have the fat, you just got to make sure you cut them in such a way where it's mostly steak and a little bit of fat. And you just chew it all up together. And it's no problem.
No, I can't chew it at all. Like just putting it in my mouth grosses me out, so I know how women feel.
Fair point. Well, Chris, next time that you go to Longhorn, you can just choose to leave me out of it.
Yeah, you don't want me to tell you next time?
No, that'll just be our new weird communication. Every time I go to Longhorn, I'll send you a picture and vice versa. We'll just make it a thing.
That's perfect. I love that.
Okay. And then eventually I'll harass your father to feed me for free.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But that takes time. That's the long play.
Yeah. I mean, I would send you the check, but I don't get one. So.
Fair point. Well, guys, if you're new to the show, first and foremost, welcome. We hope you enjoy what we're going to talk about today. It's not a particularly crazy news week, so we're going to be talking about a couple of rumors, some stuff going on with some apparently PlayStation hardware that's not the PS5 Pro, and apparently will be coming before the PS5 Pro. We've got some crazy, interesting usage of the Sonic the Hedgehog IP, and Vin Diesel is up in arms because Arc 2 had to get delayed. So, here's where we are. This is a day-to-day of gaming. But stick around. We'll get to talking about that here in a little bit, but we always start to show off in a time-honored tradition of checking in on what each other have been playing so that we can hopefully find games between each other that we all agree or not agree, but we all like and enjoy or might be interested in. But also we give a chance for you guys to find out what kind of games we're playing and see if you want to take some chances on them. So, Chris, you have a new interesting one this week that we very lightly talked about. So why don't we go ahead and start with you, good sir? What games have you been playing this week?
Well, everything that I've been playing, I talked about last week for the most part. Resident Evil 4, still plugging away there. A lot of hours into MLB because that's all I do. But then I've also started Diablo 3 and Dredge.
Okay, so we got to make a little pit stop on Diablo 3 here.
Hit me with some
How did
Diablo
this come
3.
about?
I guess one of my buddies bought the pack of Diablo 2 and 3 for like $20 on PSN. And then that just got every person in my friends group to start playing it. So I'm like, God damn it. All right, I'll stop playing MLB and play Diablo, which I already have 50 hours in. So sure. But yeah, it's been fun. Game. Diablo's great. I just, so it's a lot of them plugging away at that, they just power leveled me up on a new character because my good character is not seasonal. So I've got a seasonal character now.
Yeah. I got you. Yeah, you want a seasonal character because some of the seasonal builds are insane. And I don't know, it's been so long since I've played. I'm not sure what season they're on or how they rotate throughout the seasonal gear that was once in there.
It's like
But the
28, I
last
think.
season I can remember playing heavily was a season where they had this necromancer like armor that would automatically like pull the bones out of the things that you killed and create like floating bone armor around you.
That's pretty dope. I like that a lot.
Incredible build. Is super fun. The
last thing
mage
I
is
saw
also
was-
really fun in that.
Is it? I'm playing monk. Playing a monk.
Oh yeah.
My main character was a
Okay.
witch doctor, so a monk.
Yeah, Witch Doctor's fun too. I'm curious to see with Diablo 4. I ended up not really trying to fight because, man, Blizzard games are so popular that trying to fight the crowd to get into beta testing anything just doesn't feel worth it to me.
Yeah, it's like the queue time was like hours at some point, and it's like why?
Yeah.
Like, I'm good.
And my weekends are already so limited in time. I'm not trying to limit them further.
Exactly.
Excuse me.
Blessings.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Leave him.
No, yeah. So Diablo's been a lot of fun. It's just I don't have too much to go for with trophies. It's just get max characters, do hardcore, and 500 bounties and 100 treasure goblins. So even
Dude,
for
those
the
bounties,
it's a lot of bounties. Like
It's too many.
We found a quick way to do it where we would get a 4-player party and each person would go do one, and then we would come back together for the last one. But even still, that's doing that 100 times minimum. Yeah.
No, it's too much, man. Like I have the platinum and I love that game, and I never want to play the game again.
Oh, I can imagine.
Like I love it. I put like easily 500 hours into Diablo, Diablo 3. But between the PC release that I played at launch, and then Reaper of Souls on PC, and then finally playing on and actually I started on PS3. So I've got way too many hours in Diablo 3 across too many systems. I'm not trying to go there. But let's talk about the new game on your list this week. So Dredge,
Yes.
you were telling me
Dredge.
it's a Lovecraftian fisherman sim.
Yeah. So you only are in a boat. Like you don't leave the boat. There's no like character walking around doing shit. You can have interactions with the townspeople and the places you go. It's pretty cool. I mean, it's very basic fishing. It's you just go and then it's like a circle, and then you have to press in specific times. And even if you don't, it just means it takes longer for the fish to get pulled up. So like if you crash into rocks and you break one of your fishing rods, you can't make it go up any faster. But if you just wait, like you'll catch the fish. It's cool. I haven't like broken into any of the Lovecraftian stuff yet, but it's like, oh, don't go out at sea at night. Like that's how the other fishermen didn't come back, the stuff like that. And I've seen it. I was out at night once, and like this like tentacle like hit my boat, and I'm like, I'm just gonna go home. I don't need to be out here for this shit. But I like it a lot. It's fun. It's not, and I couldn't see myself dumping a ton of hours into it, but depending how the platinum is, like I could see myself finishing it. It's got a lot of cool mechanics. You can upgrade your ship and like get stuff like you go faster, but your panic levels go up, and your engine can overheat, and then you blow the engines out. So it's very cool. It's very interesting. I'm waiting to find out like what happens if I do blow up my ship, because I haven't done that yet. Like what's actually out in the water? Is it Cthulhu? Because it's always Cthulhu. Like,
so is it, for lack of really knowing how else to describe it, I guess, is it a game that's like a roguelite to where if you fail, you just restart from moment
I'm
one?
not sure. I haven't failed yet, but I doubt it.
That's my curiosity.
I'm imagining it'll do something like it's either going to do one of two things. You're going to die. They'll give your boat to the next fisherman, and then it'll be like, oh, we have this old boat. It's a little bit upgraded. You know what I mean? Like do that, or it'll just bring me back to the old save. I'm wondering which one it'll go with.
Yeah, I'm curious. I like games that choose to kind of introduce new mechanics and go further and further. A game I always shout out as a game that's simplistic and initial concept or premise, at least, and concept that ends up being kind of wild was the Flash game and eventually PlayStation 4 launch game,
Ski Free,
Motherload and Super Motherload. Yeah, Ski Free, great game.
Fucking all-time classic.
Dude, genuinely a great game. I'm not even remotely joking. It's very good. It's a great game.
I sent you a picture in our Discord so you can see like what the game looks like at least, and maybe you'll have a better understanding. But like I said, you literally just play as the boat.
Okay. Yeah, well, my curiosity there, because it's kind of the same in like Motherload, right? You play as a ship that's doing mining on this like weird mining colony planet that's out and about. And so it's like Dig Dug, where you're digging down and getting up all the materials, and you go back up, you sell them, you use that money to upgrade your hull, upgrade your drill so that you can go through new materials or dig through old materials faster. And then you eventually get to where you start going through like bedrock, and then eventually you go into the center of the planet. And it turns out it's like a part of me wants to go ahead and like spoil it because it's a fun game to play anyway, and it's very old. Like I said, I was playing the Motherload Flash game in high school, so that was like 2009. I mean, you know, this is very old. And then 2013 for the launch version of Super Motherload, which was the same game, just remade in a new engine and looked better. Yeah. So really fun game though, but it slowly introduced more and more mechanics, and then has a boss fight in a game that you would never thought would have one. So with all that in mind, I'm kind of thinking like, what would they do here, and could they do that? I'm curious to see, and I know you don't necessarily know the answer, but I would love to see them introduce interesting things with the Cthulhu aspects, or the Lovecraftian stuff of fear and losing your mind, and if the danger of fishing at night is that your character loses sanity quicker, and what does that do, and how does that impact things?
They've definitely hinted towards that. Like even just what I was saying, like I got the upgrade to make my boat go faster, but using that, it overheats the engine and it brings your panic up. And I don't know what bringing my panic up does yet, but that's there. So for all I know, I've been using it, and it's going to end up my character like kills himself off the side of the boat or something ridiculous, but I don't know. And I'm interested to find out, which is a good thing for the game, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. Okay, that's cool. I'll have to get around to trying it. I don't know. I am in a weird spot where I'm not wanting to play anything that I feel very committed to in like a story. I don't even know how to describe that. My game playing, I'm very happy, has been short burst games.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, man. I've had no drive to go back like to Hogwarts. I haven't really been going back to Chia in any meaningful way. And I don't even think Chia is a large game necessarily. It's just larger than I feel like currently.
No,
I've been doing a bunch of. Go ahead.
When I was just talking to Josh Ayers in our Discord, which you can again join at the link below, it seemed like it wasn't a huge game, but it has a lot of collectibles. So like the platinum is going to take you a while, but the game's not. I'm off topic, but I'm totally with you on Hogwarts. I was like, I'm good, and then I never felt the drive to go back.
And what's weird is if I make a push to go back, which I've done a few times, right? I'll just be like, I'm gonna play it. I enjoy it.
Oh yeah.
And it's really, I think it's more of where I'm at in gaming right now. And you've been in a weird thing in gaming too, where like I feel like the way you were playing, you've not been this whole year. No. And it's weird because it's like, it's impacting like the trophy competition for you.
Oh my God. So bad.
It's like your play style is just so different than usual. And it's very, I feel like most people when they're gaming, you kind of go through a funk, right? Like Irish Joe, if I'm remembering correctly, was talking about being in a weird funk. And sometimes you kind of know exactly what to do to break out of it. And then other times it's just like, I can't say I'm 100% in a funk right now, but I'm wanting to play experiences that are like, I can play this for less than 10 hours, get the whole experience, get the, primal feeling of, I got a platinum for that extra step. And then just enjoy more. Yeah, well, and I also think you can enjoy more interesting mechanics that way. Like, because shorter experiences tend to be a little more like free flowing with like, we're going to do something kind of weird and we're going to introduce weird mechanics because we don't have to harp on them for very long. So we can just introduce them, let them run their course, go about their business, and keep going.
Definitely.
So I like that.
Yeah, I guess for me, it's been a lot of like MLB fucks my whole thing up with playing games. It just does
every year.
Like it
just happens to be you were already fucked up before it.
Yeah, and it's just a lot of like stuff's not connecting. Like the last game I beat, other than before Arkham Asylum, was fucking Callisto Protocol in February. Like that was the first game I beat in that whole time. It's just been a lot of nothing's hitting. Even Batman, I don't know that would have hit if I wasn't like, I can do this for the trophy competition. I know this game like the back of my hand,
Yeah, fair point.
Even Resi 4, like I haven't wanted to.
Do you think it's you, or do you think it's where games are at right now, or some weird mix of the two?
Probably a mix of the two,
Because I feel like you were all over RE4 and now it's weird. Like, it's like you weren't, but you obviously were. It's like you had apprehensions about the changes they're making, but you still seemed excited. And now it's here. And you're like, meh.
I was always excited for RE4. Yeah, I did have issues where like I didn't want to be able to walk and shoot because that's not true to the game, to the original game, whatever. And playing RE4, like it's way better that you can walk and shoot. Like I'm not gonna sit here and like lie about it. But to me, it was like, if you're remaking RE4, like remake RE4. You can't walk and shoot in RE4. But RE4 is just a matter of, it's MLB. And it's because I bought both of them on disc, right? Like I have to get up and take MLB out, knowing in my head that an hour I'm going to want to play a game of MLB. So it's like, why even take it out at this point? Like I'm almost at a point, like I don't know if I'll end up beating RE4 until you buy it for yourself, unless you buy it on disc, because then I can at least download it. And I'm like, okay, I'll get through this way, because I can just have a quick play session and hop back into MLB.
That's wild.
I need to just only buy MLB on disc.
Do you feel like there's a game on the horizon that's going to fix this for you? Like, do you think there's a game that's coming that you're going to play and you're like, even though it's a bigger game and it's like a process, it's going to pull you in and it's going to be it?
I mean, I definitely have a game that I hope will do that. I feel like if the audience could probably tell at this point what game, where it's Baldur's Gate 3 is like a very clear, like, for me, I hope to God that I'm into that game and can play through it, because I know that like some of my friends want to do like a weekly like D&D type session with it, and I'm gonna make you play it, and I just want to play it. So I hope that it pops off like it should. Like I said, I love Larry, and I think they're an incredible studio. So I hope they can figure that game out and make it as great as Divinity 2.
Yeah, I think because I tend to play less social games, I think that's also a weird thing. Whereas I'm wanting, as much as I enjoyed the game, I actually think Forspoken burned me out too early in the year, because it's a huge, big game. Yeah. And I'm already iffy on those types of games. You know what I mean? Like,
right. Yeah.
Right. Even if I don't like it, I think most people would probably say they like Assassin's Creed open world style games, like the more modern ones, like Origin and Odyssey and Valhalla.
The worst ones, yeah.
And thankfully, Forspoken wasn't that bad, right?
Yeah.
But even in games like that I think a lot of people would consider higher quality, which iffy on my opinion, but point being is I get tired of those very quickly. So I think digging into that game and enjoying the hell out of it, but I just think going for the platinum, as much as I enjoyed doing it, I think it had long-term effects on games for the rest of the year. And it goes back to what I was talking about, where it's like the games I've been most excited about are games you can beat in like 10 hours. Like I was all over Dead Space, and Dead Space was like, I got the platinum in like 20-something hours for 2 playthroughs and a couple other stuff. You know, it's like,
yeah,
I don't know. It's, I guess technically 3 playthroughs, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I've been in a weird funk for a while though. Like I don't think I finished many games last year. It was like what I platinumed and that was it. You know, and last year, as everyone knows who listens, like the big titles that we were all excited for, I played for like an hour and I was like, this could be better. I'll put it a little nicer than I was going to. So it's been weird all around. And even
Sure.
Hogwarts, like as a huge Harry Potter fan, I was like, I'm gonna play the shit out of this and get the platinum. And even just looking at the trophy list, I'm like, there's no fucking shot on platinum in this game. Are you joking?
I don't think I'll platinum it either. Even if I do go back to it, I just think that Forspoken completely ruined that. If I wouldn't have platinum Forspoken, I could maybe see myself doing it.
Yeah.
But I think it's the same thing with Chia, right? It's like even if I end up beating Chia, I really doubt I'll go for platinum. Not because it's not a good game or whatever it be. It's just I'm getting a little tired of that kind of trophy. So looking at the games I actually did play this week, because I've been doing so much building and working on stuff, and like last week I put in a water heater for my mom and then installed a door and enclosed a porch on the house I bought next door. And then this past weekend I've had a little Honda Grom in my that I've had since like 2020 that has had issues since I've bought it. And I keep being like, I probably can't handle that, or I don't know what it is, so I'm just not going to worry about it. I'll let it drain battery and charge it up and ride it or whatever. And I literally spent like one day of the weekend and spent like $100 on some parts and stuff and got the whole thing running and back together as it's supposed to be. So I'm in a weird spot to where it's like, I guess my time is being pulled elsewhere. So VR has kind of dipped out for me a little bit more, though I'm very excited to get back into canoe. I want to try out the canoe kayak game or whatever, kayaking VR.
Kayak VR.
But for this week, because of that, I wanted games I could kind of just bounce in and out of. So I almost didn't play games at all until Saturday from when we last recorded. And on Saturday, I did The Gardens Between, the PS4 version, and then... or the PS5 version, and me and my daughter were playing it together. Very interesting game, not very long, cool mechanics. A couple that really got me for a second because of having to pay attention to what can still interact with and move even when time is otherwise stopped, and how that plays into trying to solve some of the particular puzzles. So me and my daughter were playing it, and she was so excited because she was able to figure it out. Because the other weird connecting tissue of here is that 2 of the 3 games I played here have got very odd ways of interacting with the character and world. Mm-hmm. So in The Gardens Between, you don't control the characters directly. You just control the flow of time. And the characters, well, I guess you kind of indirectly control them because you can tell them to interact with something, but you don't move them. Time moves them, and if you put them in a position where they can interact with something while time's paused, you can make them do so.
Yeah. And
so you either move the analog stick forward or to the right to move forward in time, or to the left, or you can use L2, R2. And it's a really interesting game. I like puzzle games a lot, so that was cool. And it was cool that Kyra was enjoying them. So then she stopped for a bit. When I got home later that day, I just downloaded the PS4 version and did the same thing. Me and her sat down, played through. I let her try some of the ones she didn't do whenever I finished up the PS5 version. So I got 2 platinums out of that, working on the trophy challenge, doing pretty all right. Then I moved on to picking my Vita back up because there's like a handful of games I've had installed on my Vita that I've just not played, and they've been on there for like 2-3 years. So the first one of that I decided to knock off the list is Burly Minute C. It was a PS Plus game a few years back. And I never really knew what type of game it was. And it's weird because it's like, okay, so you have like your screen, right? Your rectangular 16:9 screen. Well, it's like the game exists in like a circle that's in the middle of the screen that's only about like half of the screen size. And you, again, don't necessarily move the characters. You use the right analog stick to move this little circle frame, and it'll extend out to an oval. If you go to the right, it'll go to the right, or it'll extend out an oval to the left. And that's what moves the characters. Realistically, it's like they follow the camera.
Yeah.
And then it's like a point and click adventure where the left analog stick is like a little cursor that you can click on things and have the people interact with. And it's kind of like a point and click adventure meets like Detroit Become Human, where it's like it wants you to go through. I know that sounds crazy, but it wants you to go through and try all the different permutations of its very simple story. I won't even get into it, but it was cool. It's like the entire thing is, okay, you have a binary decision on each one of these and you can carry it through. And then the other route is just doing the exact opposite. So it's like put barrels on, touch the uvula, swim to the right, race, lose the race, win the race. It's like, it's really weird, but it was fun. It was like a 3-hour something platinum, just kind of going through. And another no God game. There's no need for it. The platinum is so. It's just play the game in every permutation, and the game even tells you that, right? You finish the first ending, and it's like try it again. And see what here's a book, and every time you do it, we'll fill this book with pages, and you're like, oh, okay.
Oh,
it was interesting. It was kind of
nice.
Cool. So another platinum out of that, and then Reverie on Vita is the one I'm about to platinum right now. I've got like 4 feathers left, and I think maybe something else. I gotta figure out. I haven't
get
looked
it
at
done during the show.
I probably could if I've really paid attention and just pulled out my beautiful Vita here. It's charging on the table.
Oh, cute.
I could probably do it while you're talking, just here and there. Just but no, that's like a Zelda-like game, and the Vita has got a handful of those that are really good. There's the ones that people are more, they know, like Oceanhorn, which is more of like a Wind Waker 3D Zelda style. Well, not 3D, but I guess. And then there's Reverie, of course. And then my favorite one of the Vita, great platinum, super fun, kind of hard because you have to go through, and I think you have to do a playthrough without getting hit at all by the bosses or something like that. It's really
Titan
wild,
Souls.
But it's Adventure Time, The Secret of the Nameless Kingdom. Great game. It's basically, and it even makes jokes about it and references towards it. It's basically just a Link to the Past in the trappings of Adventure Time. It's fantastic. It's really good.
I mean, I'd take that.
And A Link to the Past is one of my favorite Zelda games. So, yeah,
so Breath
my
of the
wife.
Wild, that's for sure.
You're right. Breath of the Wild is no Link's, Link to the Past or Link's Between Worlds or Link's Awakening. Man, Breath of the Wild's really got some work to do.
I know. It's got to start bringing itself down so nobody else gets intimidated.
Oh, I know, right? It's got to bring itself down to being a Zelda game.
That is neither here nor there, actually.
I'm sorry. Tears of the Kingdom. I mean Fortnite. I mean Tears of the Kingdom.
Hey, listen. Fortnite's been doing some shit where I'm like, I don't like Fortnite, but I might play Fortnite.
Fortnite's actually got some cool stuff on the creation side.
The creative mode. I didn't put it in the news, but you saw that Activision is DMCAing anything that's close to Call of Duty in there. People are making like maps that are like shit. I saw a shipment map, and that shit is gone.
Of course.
It sucks.
Why wouldn't it be?
You'd think
at that point you'd be like, is it parody? Like, what would it be protected as? And that's a weird question.
I don't know.
It brings us into a new age. But jokes aside about Zelda.
Protected as I'm not going to go through the legal trouble of getting this back, so it's gone. That's 100%. The protection on it.
Yeah. That's unfortunate.
In capitalism,
really.
God damn it.
It's okay. Well, Chris, I think we'll get there. I'm thinking Star Wars will be my next game to break me into the type of games I like.
Look at that, Brett. It's a perfect segue. That's fucked up. So I just called you Greg, and
you
Greg
did.
is.
I don't even know how that happened.
Well, yeah. So here's the backstory. Greg is my sous chef, and the other day I was talking to him. And I go, Brett, I need you to get this done. So it's so weird that I've done it to both of you.
It's you and Saul, man. Saul calls me Joe.
Does he?
And my favorite thing is that Joe is our black friend with dreadlocks.
Oh, God. I don't know how you must make that mistake.
And his name is Joe. I can kind of see where Brett and Greg have like a similar structure.
They have similar mouthfeel, I would say.
Yeah. There's a mouthfeel joke in there somewhere, but I'm not going to. I'm choosing not to make it. They got similar texture.
Yeah,
the word texture. It's just it rolls off the tongue in a similar way.
Yeah, it's got some good dressing on it.
I don't know. I think Greg sounds like it's part of something fancier. Like Greg is just a shitty Americanized version of like Gregorio. I don't know what the fuck Brett is supposed to be.
I don't know. A Romeo and Juliet character.
I don't know if it's the shitty Americanized version of something cooler, but
Bretford.
I can't think of one. Brett Tholomew.
I would love to meet someone named Brett Tholomew because that would just be so wildly uncalled for.
What a fucking name that would be.
Like, I'm never calling you that shit. Don't talk to me.
So, Chris,
Right.
first and foremost, we did not have a community's take this week. And that's because we did not give one last week, which is perfectly fine. We're going to get back on that, of course, with this week. But it was actually kind of nice just to have a break and not have to worry about that extra layer of things. So, yeah, work's been crazy. Home life's been good, just busy, and partially because of my own self, which leads me into an interesting conversation I had today.
Oh, good.
So, my buddy Donovan reached out to me today at lunch. And he said, "Wait, you didn't know you were ADHD?" And I said, "I don't fucking know, because that's exactly the truth." So I just thought it was funny.
Okay.
But this is where we are. He says, "Your whole life I thought you were diagnosed." And I said, "Nah." And he said, "Like, since we were kids." And I said, "We didn't go to the doctor for shit," because that's absolutely true. We were poor. I had to basically be dying to go to the doctor. It's just how life went. When you don't have enough money, you kind of do what you got to do.
Fair enough.
So anyway, it was funny because he was talking about the symptoms and talking over people and being quick to respond. And of course, I think all people have a little bit of that, but I do have it worse, where it's the anticipation of thinking the other person's about to end, and you're trying not to. I don't even know how to describe it. It's like you don't want to waste a moment to get there. So anyway, it was funny, but he led to the point of telling me that he's pretty sure he's told people that I'm diagnosed ADHD. So yeah, it's been an interesting day of me learning that apparently I might be ADHD, and of course I'm not going to let Dr. Donovan be the person to diagnose me. But it doesn't sound that out of control.
It's all right. Dr. Donovan's a pretty good name, though. It'd be like a sick rapper name. Yo, I'm Dr. Donovan, diagnosing my friends again. Nailed it. I'm a rapist.
You're a rapist. Very good. Maybe the best I've heard.
Yeah. Call me Tupac, because I'm spitting.
Now I'll tell you,
I should have said Dilophosaurus. That would have been way funnier.
If you were an analyst and a rapist, you could be an analrapist.
Yeah. Maybe I'll get that as a license plate sometime.
Yeah. Or anus tart. That's a that's a good one.
Yeah, my girlfriend's got to watch Arrested Development, because I've been saying in the kitchen a lot, I'm like, well, there's always money in the banana stand. And then she's like, I don't know what the fuck that means. I'm like, well, that's depressing. Go watch the show. It's a great show. And I'm going to get yelled at. She's over there.
You can't live your life having not watched Arrested Development. It's just how it goes.
No, 100%.
You need to fix that now.
She needs to know what a never nude is.
Yes. There's no T in Timo Sil. At least not where you'd think.
Oh my.
Listen. Yeah, so that's what I've learned, is that apparently I'm ADHD alongside with you. But from looking at very, very lightly, just to see, because I'm like, I don't feel like I have attention problems, I guess would be like the thing. So I guess the flip side of ADHD is like hyperactivity, and instead of just having issues, because like I can sit down, I have no problems learning things. I told you I hyperfixate. So I was looking and I was like, maybe that is it. I can't say for sure, but hyperfixation wasn't necessarily on the list, but some of the other things sound like they're there. But to be fair, one of the things that was there was if it's not better described by another, disorder or whatever you want to call it, like personality disorder or whatever it be. So I was like, yeah, it could just be that. It could just be that whatever I am, I'm there. But have you ever heard people call themselves like functioning alcoholics?
Yes.
I'm a functioning ADHD. That's basically all. If I have ADHD, that is what I am.
You're a high functioning ADHDer. I love
because
that
I'm telling you, it like Friday when I got home and started working on the motorcycle, it was like I got home and then I was in the back, and then suddenly it was like 9:00, and I'm like, what the hell? I've been working on this for 4 hours.
Yeah.
Just pulling wires, cutting stuff. So that's definitely the problem I have, is like I get on a task and then I'll put on music, because like the new Nothing Nowhere album came out, so I put that on. So it's like I have two things to focus on simultaneously, and that helps me focus on both of them way better. So we'll see if I choose to adventure out into dealing with finding out if I'm actually ADHD. But I've landed on the fact that if it's not been problematic in my life till this point, why rock the boat?
Yeah, I mean, my biggest thing response to that would be like, you don't know what it's like to be focused properly. And
That
that'll
may be
change
the
shit for you.
case. But why would I go and medicate myself when I'm not to the point where it's having an adverse effect on my life? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I guess what I was saying was that you don't know that it's not. You're just not noticing it. You know what I mean?
Well, if it is having an adverse effect on my life, it's doing a poor job of doing so, is what I would say.
Fair.
I make plenty of money. I have, I've always held down jobs. I'm good at doing the things that I tend to do. I know I'm weird. That doesn't really matter to me. I don't know if that's a result of ADHD, fucked up parents, or life. I don't know, but we'll find out.
The guinea pig for nature versus nurture.
I really think me and my siblings might be, because my oldest brother and then my younger sister, so I'm the middle kid. Mm-hmm. The ones who had the least time of my parents being stable and somewhat making sense are the ones with the most problems. It's like my brother was raised into them being way too young and getting pregnant right as soon as they got married at like 19, 18. And so them doing crazy stuff to each other. And then my sister was right when my parents were getting divorced whenever I was 6. So she never really had my dad around. So I thought for a while, like, maybe of the three of us, I just had the most normal life. And so it's impacted me the least. But that's, who knows, Maybe some armchair psychologist can help me one of these days. But I'm too poor to want to pay somebody for that. And I'm not even poor. I could totally afford it. I just don't want to. I was talking about the other day. I have poor mentality. I never have once thought about going on a cruise, because in my head, cruise is something that people with money do. And even though I have money, I think of myself as people with no money.
Yeah, I get that.
It's a hard one to go through. But Chris, it's time to go into the news, since we do not have a community's take. But when we do go back to the community's take, remember that you can be part of it by going over to our social media on Twitter at Triangle SQRD. You can find us on Facebook in the group Triangle Squared, a PlayStation podcast. And lastly, if you want to join our day-to-day discussions or respond to the community's take call, you can hop into the Discord, which is always in the description below, whether you're watching on YouTube, listening on your favorite podcast service. If you are listening on your favorite podcast service, take a second to rate and or review us if your service offers that. It helps us know that you enjoy the show, helps other people know if we're worth their time. And if it's a review one, it's a good way to get feedback, much like one of the people and multiple people over time have mentioned that we should do timestamps. So we have begun doing timestamps, which we hope you enjoy and use liberally to find whatever it is that you are interested in. But with that being said, we're going to hop off into the news, Chris. And the first piece of news is over a game that I realize neither of us put on our list for the Metacritic draft.
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought one of us might, but I guess for both of our sakes, we're glad we didn't.
Yeah, I would say so.
Because that was my first thought was, wait a minute. If this is delayed out and I for some dumb reason chose it, I'm fucked.
I think just the presence of Dom Toretto kept me away.
Really?
Yeah.
It brought me closer. It made me feel like he was family,
Yeah, familia. I did see a good shirt at work the other day that just had the Toretto family auto shop or something like that. I was like, that's pretty sick. Good for you.
Yeah, I got you. I mean, I'm assuming there's great shirts all over the place for that, but I don't know. You had that little bit for a while where it was everybody was doing the family jokes, which I get. I mean,
yeah.
it was COVID. People are at home. Fast and Furious 9's trying to come, but it was
a family of jokes.
It was a family of jokes. But Chris, in a particularly confusing decision, Studio Wildcard, the studio behind Ark Survival Evolved, and its sequel, the Vin Diesel-led Ark 2, has announced a delay of the sequel and the shuttering upgrade of its predecessor. The team announced the delay saying, quote, So why the delay? Our goal is to make Arc 2 the best game it can be and provide a truly exceptional and rewarding experience for players. Unreal Engine 5 is incredible new technology to us and all developers. And we aim to use this cutting edge tech to its fullest potential while creating a game with never before achieved scope at Studio Wildcard. As we learn more about the engine and develop the sequel, we have adapted our workflow and adjusted our pipelines to accommodate this new next gen paradigm. And because of everything that involves, we need more time for development, end quote. The truly confusing move comes next with the announcement of Ark Survival Ascended, an Unreal Engine 5 remaster of Survival Evolved. The title will release via the Ark Respawn bundle on Xbox for $49.99, which is also bundled with the second game, as Arc 2 is exclusive to Xbox. The upgrade will be able to be purchased on PSN for $39.99. There will be no upgrade path for existing players, and the servers for Evolved will go down. So the only way for current players to be able to enjoy the game in a multiplayer setting is to buy this remaster, which comes out in August. So clearly it was a mouthful, but this screams bunch of interesting decisions. Chris, what are your thoughts here?
Fucking insane choice. Like, what in the world would cause them to do this? I mean, I guess I know it. Like, it's greed, right? Like, they want to sell the remaster to pay for the apparently $10 Arc 2. But it just seems pretty shitty to be like, yeah, this game you've been playing for years at this point, we're just turning it off, and then you have to spend $50 to keep playing. You know, I don't have a problem with, like, what is it? Like on PS5 when it's like, oh, the Ghost of Tsushima director's cut is $10. Like, that doesn't bother me. But what does bother me is when the game is perfectly playable, like in this sense, and they're just turning it off and forcing you to buy another one. Like, if this was being left on, I wouldn't have much to say, but shutting it off seems very shitty.
Well, and I get what you're saying, right? It's like, if we're going to make it analogous to what happened with Ghost of Tsushima, it's a single player game, and yeah, there is the Legends mode that exists there, but it's primarily a single player game. And so the difference is that Sucker Punch isn't like, hey, we're going to completely close the no access to PS4's Ghost of Tsushima anymore.
Right.
The only way to play it is to buy this one and play this one. And I think the really interesting thing about this is that this is a good and bad, right? This is the kind of double-edged sword thing. It's nice because it really does kind of show that developers are hitting that era of being comfortable with foregoing the PS4, Xbox One user base, because by doing this, unless, I say that, is the remaster even in Unreal Engine 5? Is it still on Xbox One and PS4, or is it only on PS5 and Series SX?
From what I've read, it was just next gen. I'll double check while you're talking.
Well, if that is the case, then I think it's a good thing where it's heralding the fact that they're willing to give up that, 150 million user base in order to say, like, hey, we can do a better game on next gen. Next gen's got enough consoles for us to make this move. We can make some money with it, of course. And bam, here we are. We've got a product out that forgoes that one. And that's nice because you want to see developers making that move so that hopefully other developers stay true to making that move. But the thing that we hear all the time in every generation is the rising cost of AAA games development, the rising cost of development, and how hard it is to be independent, and this and that. And at some point, it just feels like, if that's the case, then why would you forego 150 million units from PS4, Xbox One? And if you really want to crank the numbers up, 300 million units between PS4, Xbox One, Switch, PS5, Xbox Series X? Like, if you really want to run the table, that's how you do it. Yeah,
again, it's just a matter of, like, why to turn them off. Like, the game, you still let it be played. I mean, and this is just a next gen release, so it's just a weird move overall to me. If you're that poor that you need to turn off the servers to save some money. You should have maybe asked Microsoft for a little bit more when you sold them the game. Like, I don't understand. Like, this just seems like really gross on all levels, personally.
It's a weird move. Like, I definitely am for the idea of moving the game forward, and I think eventually it kind of feels like, oh, you got to kill the stagnant version. Like, Destiny 1 on PS3 is dead, if I'm not mistaken. But when they came out with Destiny 2, they weren't like, hey, fuck Destiny 1. You can still go back and on and play it. So I get that you don't want to keep servers on in perpetuity, but still, a weird move. I won't necessarily call it an outright bad move, but I think it's a move that's going to garner them a lot of criticism if it hasn't already. And it just goes back to that thing of why kill something like this, but money is always the root of that question. They don't want to spend money on servers for another version or just upkeep server maintenance on multiple versions of servers for the same game, arguably. The other flip side of this is the upside that it comes with of allowing them to kind of piddle around with the engine and learn how to do things. Like, I feel like there was another game recently that, recently that did a similar thing. I don't think it was multiplayer focused. It was just like, hey, we've remastered or remade the game in a new version of our engine, and it got us familiar with these tools in a better way. Like, you can look at The Last of Us remastered. They said that was getting them familiar with the PS4. Killzone Shadowfall, even though it was an actual game, was them being like, hey, this was really just our way to A, make another Killzone game, but B, test out our new engine that we're going to be using for our next real project, Horizon.
Right.
So it's not the craziest thing. There's good and bads all the way around.
Again, my biggest issue is just with them turning off the servers. I'm not even... If you're going to turn off the servers, there should be an upgrade path. Like that, I will say. You know?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's like, hey, we're forsaking that one, but at least maybe it's $10. Maybe it's something.
Just give me a cheaper version, even if it's half off, like whatever. But turning it off and then forcing you to buy a new game to play the content you already own, not cool.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's see. Reed Pop and the ESA have canceled E3 2023's digital and in-person events. As the participants in the event dropped out, notably Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, Ubisoft, and Tencent, the event became completely unviable. In a release statement, the reason was given as the event, quote, simply did not garner the sustained interest necessary to execute it in a way that would showcase the size, strength, and impact of our industry, end quote. I think the most interesting thing about this is the part of you that feels like nostalgia for things makes I'll miss E3 as an idea. I don't necessarily miss E3 for what it had become at its worst.
Yeah. That's kind of exactly where I'm at, where I miss the, like, I don't know, like the biggest day of video games in June. Like, that was always fun to be like at work with, especially at my old job where my boss was into it too. Just be like, we're going to watch E3 all day. Like, this is going to be chill as hell. And like yelling across the line, like, oh, this got announced. Oh, this got announced. No, believe it or not, Hollow Knight 2 is still not being announced, you know, like,
yeah,
you know, like that stuff. But it was, once it became a public event, it was dead. Like, I knew that. It just sucks because it was nice having that E3 time where you knew you were going to see some cool shit.
Yeah, I think the part of me that misses it is the part of me that thinks back to all the amazing moments that have happened. And while it makes sense that they wouldn't necessarily happen that way in modern gaming where you don't need that platform in the same way, it's hard not to think back about like Kazurai pulling out the PSP and be like, Ridge Racer! Like,
giant enemy crabs.
It's a memeable, ridiculous... It is. It's ridiculous, but it's fun. I mean, that was a good time. I always, one of my favorite E3 moments was PSP support in general. I remember freaking out when they announced the Sony Bend Resistance Retribution for PSP. I thought, like, this is fucking wild. This is really cool. Can't believe they're putting a game like that on PSP. But even like the moments where they had like Kevin Butler come out and do the little gaming speech. And, you know, it's really cheesy and kind of cringy now, but it was in the spirit of the moment, it was great. Like it was fun and it was lighthearted. And, you know, I don't necessarily, I think it would still have a place in today's gaming landscape. Like, yeah, we've matured a lot, but the PS3 also saw a lot of the way we view the idea of mature games start. And therefore, I think this could carry over.
Like Caffeine Steve or whatever that was.
Yeah. It's just, I don't know. It's unfortunate. It's like I'll miss E3 for the best that it could be, and I understand that it has to go away for the worst that it was. And the craziest part of this is probably the fact that Jeff Keighley wasted absolutely zero time dancing on the grave of E3, which
good for him.
I know a lot of people were talking about, but he was a big part of E3 for a long time. So I don't think that this is something that he's necessarily looking at least on the fan level, which I think for anything anyone may have to say about Jeff, I would never doubt that he is a fan. I think he is. When you think back to like the old Spike Game Awards, back when they were ridiculous, like Samuel L. Jackson up there with naked girl, like almost naked girls dancing around him, and be like, what the fuck is this? I really like that Jeff brings like I actually play games and I'm a fan and this is what I want to see and I know what people are interested in. I like that part. And I like that when people are up on stage and talking about things, he seems like he's actually interested. That's cool.
Yeah.
So this, I'm sure, is a hurt for him. But
I watched a bunch of stuff, and even I'm excited, or this got me really hyped up. And then you watch the show, and you're like, "Yeah, I'm excited too." He's right. Like I get it.
Yeah, and he still has good moments. So Summer Game Fest coming in. I think the real thing is that Summer Game Fest. Do you think it can hit the same level of excitement, or do you think it already has as what E3 was, or do you think it still has to kind of build up and can actually fill that void, or is it just E3 since it was a physical event and those are kind of going away? Do you think that type of event will never really happen again?
I mean, I don't think it'll ever really happen again. I think like Summer Game Fest, I don't ever see like Sony and Microsoft and Nintendo being there, because even though like E3's gone, but we're still getting all the June press conferences, which is great. But Sony, Nintendo, Microsoft are doing that on their own. So it's never going to be what E3 was, because a lot of what was hype about E3 was knowing Microsoft was going at 1 o'clock, Sony was going at 6 o'clock, and then there was a bunch of hodgepodge of weird shit in the middle. But the stuff you were looking forward to was happening. You knew when it was going on. Now it's like you could see some cool stuff, but it's going to be a lot of like Embracer games and Monolith's Wonder Woman, you know, stuff like that, which is none of that is bad, but it doesn't hold the same je ne sais quoi of the big three.
Well, I agree, but you know, part of what I also think killed E3, killed the idea of that type of events. Yeah, E3 itself did, but I think that type of event doesn't work the same way, and it's why we're having problems with Microsoft and Sony and people being like, I want to see a Sony showcase. And I think the real answer is that, yeah, budgets have ballooned, but the real problem in gaming is that they take way too fucking long to make now. You really go back and think about the fact that Naughty Dog made Crash Bandicoot, Crash Bandicoot 2, Crash Bandicoot 3, Crash Team Racing. They made Jack and Daxter, Jak 2, Jak 3, Uncharted 1, Uncharted 2, Uncharted 3, The Last of Us, all within roughly 2 to 3 years apart from each other.
Yep.
Can you even imagine that pace now from any AAA developer?
I mean, yeah. I mean, Insomniac does it.
And so
far.
Insomniac does it by being multi-teamed. For a long time, Naughty Dog was doing that with a single team.
Well, that's insane, and that's why we hear about all the crunch, right? Which more power to you.
Sure, and part of it's crunch, but part of it's just because of the demand of games going up and the market thinking that, and clearly the market being true because we make it so that every game needs to be 30 to 40 hours full of all this stuff. And that's kind of the thing. Is like, I've been looking at a bunch of older games and looking at stuff, and I'm in a weird. I think what's really going on with my fucking gaming is I'm wanting to play older stuff right now because I'm finding that interesting. Like, I'm actually having a blast playing on my PSP or my PS Vita rather. And I don't know why. I'd never played the game, but it just entered my mind, and I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm pretty sure this week I'm going to buy Haze for PS3, and I'm going to fucking play it because I never played it. All right. A little bit of technical difficulty there. Not exactly sure where I was, but I think what I was going to is the idea that games are so long because we tell them that apparently it's supposed to be that long, and anytime they try and put a shorter game out, we let it fail or we purposely don't buy it. So I'm not saying everyone else is wrong for that opinion, but the real problem I see is that showcases like E3 and like the PlayStation Showcase are getting harder and harder to do at a yearly pace because development is getting more and more scarce. Because now sequels are not taking 2 to 3 years to do. Used to, a new IP took longer, right? It'd be like, oh, that's gonna be like 3 years, maybe 4. And now it's like, oh, a new IP, 7 years. We need 7 years to make this. And then when it comes time to make a sequel, we'll need 5. And it's like, okay, that seems a little crazy, but it seems like that's where we're headed. What do you kind of think about that, Chris? I mean, I guess what I'm thinking is I miss the time in which games felt more varied, and now it feels like every game is trying to be as big as the last one.
I think that's true. I mean, games have clearly gotten more expensive and more vast, but I think you see the big issues with just look at stuff like Rocksteady's last game was 8 years ago, and
yeah,
they're making a very copy and paste video game. No offense, and now it's still taking them almost probably close to a decade before they release one. And it's exactly like you were saying. Naughty Dog put out all those games in the span between night and now, right? Like,
yeah, and games that were considered seminal classics. And that's why I really use Naughty Dog, is that it's an example of a developer who almost every one of their games has got accolades for being top of the industry,
Right, exactly. It just doesn't make much sense. But it was what Sean Layden said. It's like games are getting too expensive and too big, and we need to bring them back down. And I agree. Clearly, I agree. Well, that's why I spend more time on PS3 at this point.
See, I think that's the interesting thing. Where is this like a lesson to learn, a lesson to be learned? Because people are still relatively, and this is way calmer in reality, but people are still relatively apprehensive about a 3.5 hour movie, 4 hour movie,
Same.
Right? Like the new Avatar is like, whoa, what? I don't know if I want to sit that long in a theater, and it still clearly is doing really well. But you're asking people to sit for roughly, at max, double the time they usually would for a normal movie. What we're talking about in gaming now is taking a game experience like Uncharted or The Last of Us, a game that was like 12 hours, and saying, all right, we're going to make The Last of Us 30 hours. Okay, that's about double, but it's also that double constitutes a lot more time. Double an hour and a half, 2 hours is 3-4 hours.
Yeah,
double of 12 hours is 24 hours, and it's like that's a lot bigger of a double. And so it starts to feel like movies seem to have learned that you don't want to pass a certain thing because it gets a little too complicated to keep people's interest up. And yet gaming seems like it's just got to be more and more and more. Like, you can argue movies are bigger in the fact that their production is bloated in ways that it may not need to be. But the reality is most movies are still typically shot, edited, all CG work done, and released in 2 years.
Yeah. They know from minute announcements to the ending how exactly when it's coming out too. So,
can you imagine if gaming had that?
I mean, I'd prefer it. It would be nice for one video game to come out when they say it's going to.
Those days are gone, sir.
I know. And I mean, it's good and bad. I mean, I guess it's good overall that people aren't going crazy working, but it does suck that it's like, I guess like playing Spider-Man 2, like just the laws of trilogies, right? That game is going to end on a cliffhanger, and then I'm going to be 40 by the time the next one comes out. Like, I don't know how you stay excited for that story arc.
Well, yeah, that's kind of my thing too. Is like the iteration process makes it harder to stay excited, and it leads to the problems that I think games like. And I know people are going to be upset about this. I think God of War Ragnarok had it to a significantly lesser degree, but I think Horizon Forbidden West, a game I really quite enjoyed, the problem it had is that taking 5 years to make a sequel for it means that it felt like a perfected 2017 game instead of a pretty good but really pushing the forefront of what's going on 2022 game.
Well, that's another, maybe this is just a weird thing, but another big issue with the length of time is you start a game, like if you started a game in 2018, like you're making a battle royale. And at this point in 2023, everyone's like, gross, don't give me that shit. You know, it's the time between, and the dev time is too long.
Well, the dev time is so long that the market can change to the point where your game is dead on arrival.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really unfortunate way to go. And the only way I can really think about it is I guess this is still happening. I'm not acting like it's not. But there was a point in time where like games could be like, you know what? I feel like games haven't been doing this. Like, I don't know if you remember the EA Criterion shooter Black for PS2.
I do, yes.
Great game. And the whole point of that game was the dude being like, I don't feel like video games do a good job at portraying what shooting a gun feels like. They don't give enough credit or love to the gun models, the feeling of the gun, how the gun it interacts as a player, basically. And his whole thing was like, I just want to make a game where you can be in a room with just you, some objects, and a gun, and you can destroy shit with a gun, and you just have fun. Yeah. And that was that entire game's premise and how it built off of. And that game was great. And I just don't feel like games have that same risk anymore, because it's like people aren't willing to kind of do that. Partially because more people are creating games, so those problems and thoughts are getting solved quicker and iterated on quicker. And part of it, I just think, is that games are so big and take so long that you can't really be like, can the only thing we have to work off be like, wouldn't it be fun if you could just have a really high quality gunplay, and then we'll just worry about the story and shit towards the end?
Yeah, I mean, I think
nobody can do that.
A lot of the issues with that is I always make this joke, but it's the same reason. Like, if I go anywhere for dinner, I'm probably getting a bacon cheeseburger, right? And it kind of translates to devs and making games where you're gonna make what you know is gonna sell, right?
Yeah,
I'm always gonna get a bacon cheeseburger because I know I like a bacon cheeseburger. So believe it or not, I'm not going to try the picante grilled swordfish with fucking avocado cum on the top, because I don't know if that's going to be good. But I do know that you can't really fuck up a bacon cheeseburger. You can.
Yeah.
But it's hard.
You're right.
And that's the same thing with video games. Like, I can't fuck up this modern war shooter taking place in Afghanistan where you kill Osama bin Laden for the 87th time. But so it's a lot less risky to spend $100 million on that. So that's why, like, I always joke with my girlfriend where I'm like, if I'm paying for dinner, I'm not trying anything new. If you want to pay, maybe I'll try sushi, right? Something along those lines. Like, she doesn't like sushi, but you get my point, right? Like, if I have to pay for it, I'm getting something I know I like, because I ain't wasting money on a fucking...
It's my big. I have a huge problem with that. But the weird thing is I'm actually kind of opposite in gaming. I am very likely to just be like, this looks cool. I have no clue what it is. I'm just going to buy it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
but for some
reason,
you're right. If I go to a restaurant, I'm like, no, bro, I'm just going to get this. I know that this sounds good. It sounds like something I'd eat. I won't regret eating here.
Yeah,
spending the money.
I didn't like rice when I was a kid, and I like it now. Like, tastes change, but I might enjoy a video game down the line, so it's a lot less of a risk than, wow, this dinner sucks, and this is what I have to deal with for the next 12 hours until breakfast time. You know, like...
No, you're right. Well, and like, going back to your shooter thing, I think the interesting thing there is like when games do try and do something different within that space. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen at all. Like, it's not the reinvention of the world, but part of what I loved about Deathloop was that it felt like a first-person shooter with an at least not oversaturated loop, pun intended. Mm-hmm. But it felt like, okay, yeah, this gives me the moment-to-moment gunplay that I find fun in first-person shooters. But it also gives it to me in a way that I'm not used to seeing. So the novelty of that doesn't wear off very quickly. And so it's kind of like when games do try to be risky and do something different, it's like now they get, and it's always happened, right? There have been people that have rioted and gone against games like Manhunt. I don't know if you remember the campaigns against Manhunt back in the day.
I do.
Also a
murder
ballsy
simulator.
Game. A ballsy game. You're like, I feel like this is a way for us to talk about violence in video games and do
Manhunt,
so by
Bully.
Yeah, it's like Rockstar used to be about trying to push the thing and have a social commentary, and then they got bullied out of that somehow, and now they just
Nice.
but now they just make arguably great games, but it's like I don't feel like they, you know what I mean? They don't.
They're not
push
risky games. There's no risk
really
in
not.
GTA 5.
There's no risk in Red Dead 2, if we're being honest. It's like
me from 3 years ago would have told you there's a lot of fucking risk in Red Dead and it didn't pay off. So
my point of the risk in Red Dead is not that it's not going to sell. It'll make its money. Now, whether or not it's commercially or widespread loved in the same way, yeah, that could be up for grabs. But commercially, it's a sequel to a beloved franchise. If that's what you meant by
risk, then yeah, I see that.
Yeah.
Where I'm thinking gameplay wise.
Now, I appreciate that gameplay wise, they put a lot of risk in my opinion. Making guns that jam and more sim-like elements was a huge change that I'm surprised people were as willing to accept as they were. But
I love Red Dead, but the opening the drawers for half a can of tobacco still sucks. I just stopped doing it when I played it the last time.
See? Well, but the game I was thinking of is a game that gets that has gotten flack every time it's tried to get moved forward. It's been being tried to be made for 10 years, and that's 6 Days in Fallujah.
Oh, God.
Like, that's a game that I don't even know for sure if it is risky, but it's like even if it's trying to do something a little different and out of the box, it's like, no! So, or at least that's what it feels like outside looking in.
6 Days in Fallujah reminds me of that meme of Legolas and the short redhead guy. I don't watch those movies where it's like Fox News is Legolas and 2004 Fox News is Legolas and 2020 CNN is Dwarf Man, and it's like, I never thought I'd be fighting next to an elf.
Legolas and Dwarf Man.
He is a dwarf, right?
He is a dwarf. His name's Gimli.
Okay, Legolas and Gimli. You know Legolas. The meme I'm talking about? All right, listen, dude. Going back to what we were talking about before.
Maybe you've got something going on. Legolas and Dwarf Man.
I would watch that movie. That would be the great names for the characters in a Lord of the Rings parody.
Yeah, it sounds like a Rick and Morty style parody of like, you're just gonna go off and make a parody of, instead of it being sci-fi, it's gonna be like high fantasy, dark fantasy. It's like it's just gonna be a parody of that, and it's gonna be based around Gimli and Legolas's characters.
Dwarf Man and Legolas's characters.
Yeah.
Get it right.
Sorry, yeah. Legolas and Dwarf Man.
Like I said, movies are too long. Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, the adventures of Dwarf Man and Legolas.
He's a man made out of Legos, and every time he gets hit, he loses
Lego
one.
lost.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I get where you're coming from there, though, right? You're talking about excuse me, you're talking about 6 Days in Fallujah, right?
Yeah. Or it's the Puritan right, and then now the Puritan left is all like, we can't let you play this video game. It's offensive.
And the crazy thing is I just think it's like, can you imagine if someone would have gotten in the way of them making Spec Ops: The Line?
I mean, I can imagine it. They'd be wrong.
I can too. It's
the greatest game on PS2.
And it's so good, right? And I feel like that's what I remember little bits about Haze. Like, Haze is supposed to be like
Halo
not supposed to be anti-military, but it's supposed to be like looking at the dark side of what military campaigns offer. So I'm not even kidding. I'm going to buy Haze and I'm going to attempt to play Haze. Whether or not it's good is going to be a whole different setting. But Haze is this weird example of what I'm talking about, where the fact that someone was like, bro, what if we made a shooter game and your guy was wearing like bee-inspired armor and we gave you like nectar and they got high on nectar. And since you had to inject it yourself, you could overdose your own character on nectar and you had to deal with the responsibility of how that impacts your gameplay. I think that regardless of how the game actually ended up, that is a completely wild and cool as shit idea that I wish someone had the balls to do again.
Yeah, I mean, I would be down if Free Radical made a Haze too.
Free Radical are back. They opened back up under Deep Silver. The possibility is there. Haze, if I'm not mistaken, they own half of Haze.
Okay.
Ubisoft owns the other half.
Okay. Sure. I bet you could get that away from them. You could be like, listen, Just let us have this back. No, you don't want to do anything with it.
Who knows, man? Who knows? Stranger things have happened. And speaking of Deep Silver, they're owned by the same company that EA sold the rights to Kingdoms of Amalur to THQ.
Where's
Nordic,
that DLC?
Right?
I
keep
was thinking
waiting
about that the other day.
Yeah.
They haven't even mentioned it.
Makes me wonder if that game did any kind of good.
Probably not.
That's unfortunate. But you know what? we haven't completely gotten there, but for the sake of jumping in line, where risks are being taken in very odd ways is games like The Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog, where it's a free Steam game that just uses the cast of Sonic to be like, hey, this is going to be like a visual novel murder mystery. It's a great idea. People talked about how they missed some of the characters in Sonic Frontiers because the problem with the generations of Sonic going back is that they would always try and introduce a new cast of villains, but they'd keep the same not villains necessarily, but they'd introduce more characters, right? Like Silver and the Crocodile. I can't remember his name right now. Anyway, there's the other teams that are going around, and then there are, of course, more villains that get introduced. And you end up with a large cast of characters that's like, how do I do something with them? And this is a really interesting way to use them. Be able to give the fan service of not in that way. You get your head out of the gutter, people. But servicing the fans' wants of seeing their characters in action. That was
worse somehow, dude. I've got to be honest.
Servicing the fans?
Yeah, I like that a lot less.
Yeah, you're right. It still sounds oddly sexual.
It sounds significantly more sexual.
Yeah, it sounds sexually charged is really the way I'd record.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So listen, my point being is that hopefully people who are fans of the series like seeing all their characters in one game that you can interact with in a weird way. The fact that this is also free when they easily could have charged for this, interesting to me. I'm only upset that it's only on Steam. Like, this would have been a really cool console game too.
It would have. I would have played it on console.
Yeah, we'll see, man. We'll see. I don't have too much more to say about the Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog other than the fact that it definitely seemed like a day early April Fool's joke. But I was like into the idea just the name of it alone, I was like, this sounds like murder mystery involving Sonic. This sounds fun. And then I saw the gameplay and it looks awesome.
Yeah, it does look cool. It looks like a great visual novel.
And they're being crazy with it because I'm not a huge Family Guy fan, but the fact that they had the dead pose from Family Guy has Sonic laying on the ground with his arms bent over. It's just, they're having a good time there. That's
all
that's the important part. Yeah, it's the important part. All right, man. Moving on, Konami has hopped back into the gaming scene with a new creators first studio in Osaka, Japan. They appear to be sparing no expense as the studio is located in the city center and is going to come equipped with everything needed to produce big budget video games. This includes motion capture technology. The past few years have indicated that Konami is moving back towards big budget game production after shying away from them in the late PS3, early PS4 era. So the interesting thing here, I guess I'll go ahead and continue, but recently announced Silent Hill 2, as we all know, is coming from the Bloober team exclusively to the PlayStation 5, and the rumors have been percolating, like Mary J. Blige, about a remake of Metal Gear Solid 1 and Metal Gear Solid 3 for a long time, and even recently a new Castlevania. VGC had previously reported that Konami was planning a massive presence at E3, but as previously discussed, that will have to move to something else. Maybe Summer's Game Fest, maybe the Video Game Awards, or maybe just a really show that they're back in the game by being like, hey, here's a Konami event. We're having our whole own showcase.
Or hear me out, the PlayStation showcase.
Or, yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought up PlayStation, though, because I think the first interesting thing here is people have been wanting for a long time hey, Sony buy and or license the Konami thing so that they can finally get games made. Now that Konami is moving back into this, do you think this is because they're trying to look at getting themselves bought? I don't think so, personally. Or B, do you think that this is to be like, hey, we're not trying to sell or anything. We're just going to start using all of our IP again to start making money?
I guess it depends, right? Because there's totally a chance that, yeah, they're developing games, but Sony's paying for them. That's, or Microsoft's paying for them, or Tencent, whoever is paying for them.
Sure. But the interesting thing here is that there's no reason for them to do this in-house, and that's what they're doing. Like, Silent Hill 2 and Bloober Team is out of house, and so are all the upcoming Silent Hill projects. But the whole point here is to make a place for them to develop in-house games and bring all that back in-house when they previously shuttered all their development studios.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't have a too cogent of an argument, but the one I can think of is like if Sony's paying for it, and instead of a 70% cut rip, they're taking a 50% cut rip of, let's say, MGS3 remaster, right? That would be a good reason to do it on yourself. It's like they're paying for all this. We got to set up the studio and make the game, but they're bankrolling it. I mean, that's certainly possible. I don't know. I mean, the problem with Konami is nobody's going to buy, at least in gaming, all of Konami, because Sony doesn't need gyms. So it's hard to say that they're setting up for purchase unless they're going to sequester that part of the company and sell it. That's possible.
Well, it's kind of, it goes back to that argument or the point that people were making about, and it's not that there's no value, clearly, but the value proposition was different between both of these. So I'm thinking of back when people were talking about AT&T trying to sell their gaming division off, right? And how that didn't necessarily guarantee that there would be access to the properties that Warner Brothers had with their Warner Brothers gaming access to with all of Warner Brothers IP. And so you start to go to the thing of like, well, I guess there's value in the sheer development aspects of having teams that are capable that can make games and bringing them in-house. But the IP not being there is an interesting aspect. And then you flip it around and look at Konami, and it's like, well, you have all this IP that if you bought from Konami or licensed with them, you would for sure have access to. But then you don't have access to have Konami develop them. You have to find someone to develop them. The craziest thing would have been is Sony bought the AT&T gaming division and they just bought all the IP for or licensed all the IP for Konami and just said threw them together and was like, Rocksteady, you're making Castlevania, which actually I'm not even joking. That
Dude,
sounds awesome.
That sounds sick. NetherRealm, you are making MGS 6.
What a weird game that would be.
Oh, it'd be sick, though.
I know people who are really into fighting games probably won't love to hear this. I would love to see what a non-fighting NetherRealm Studios game would look like.
Well, they did it mostly with what? Mortal Kombat Apocalypse, I think it was? Where it's an RPG?
Well, they did it with... No, are you thinking about... maybe it is Apocalypse. I was thinking about Shaolin Monks, where it's like a dungeon crawler game.
Yeah.
Even then, though, that's PS2. That's so long ago that it's hard to really think of.
Armageddon.
So it's like, what would a modern one look like, you know?
Oh, absolutely. I'm not saying that I disagree, but...
Like, when's the last time they made a non-fighting game?
Probably one of those two games we just discussed.
That's rough, man. So
but don't do what you're not good at.
I mean, we talked about make that damn bacon cheeseburger if it's going to keep you around, right. I suppose.
It's like Chili's, don't make sushi. Same kind of thing.
But see, going back to there, right? The thing about making a good bacon cheeseburger is at the end of the day, you know that even if you go somewhere new and they have a good bacon cheeseburger, you're like, man, that was a good bacon cheeseburger. I always like those. But if you went there and you did try something way different and it was delicious, you'd be like, damn, that'd leave way more of an impression on you.
For sure. But I can tell you that
they may go bankrupt in the pursuit of that.
Well, the thing is, like, I found a place that had a good bacon cheeseburger and I remembered it. And I like going to that place. So,
also fair.
It's hard to say. I think, take risks, but you have to be able to sell me on it. That's all.
I think the unfortunate part about the risk conversation, and that's probably what was going on in Konami when they shut down, is like, what's the risk of having to deal with elongated development and development skyrocketing and blah, blah, blah. But I just wish that companies that found themselves and got their success by being risky kept that energy alive, because I don't feel like Rockstar is a risky developer at all anymore. And at one point in time, every game of theirs was controversial and out there and risky and weird. And I haven't felt that energy from them honestly since PS3, like early PS3. Like
No,
Grand
I'm
Theft
with
Auto
you.
4 wasn't even really controversial at that time. Everyone knew Grand Theft Auto, and it was just fine. Now,
Yeah.
if you told me this would be a ballsy, risky ass move, but if if Rockstar came out and was like, "We're making Manhunt 3 today, buddy," here we are, I'd be like, "Damn, that's a wild decision."
Shadow drop.
Well, I'd say it's a wild decision, but honestly, I think that because gaming has become so much more mature since the PS2 days, I almost think Manhunt would be able to survive with a lot less grief today.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. You know, you're right, though. Rockstar has become a significantly less risky studio. They made the best sports game of all time. And they haven't taken a risk.
They
since
made
then.
one of the best racing games of all time. And it's just like they just like, "Eh, fuck it."
Yeah. They made one of the best games about bullying of all time. Like,
I don't see how that happens though. Like, that's the thing is like, I respect that, even though it's taking a lot longer, I respect that certain studios still push in ways that I think is true to who they are. Because like Sucker Punch, right? Great acquisition for Sony, and Sucker Punch's whole thing is that they were known for being really good at making new original IP. They did it with Sly, they did it with Infamous, they've done it again now with Ghost of Tsushima. Like they are a sensible thing, and I think that was risky. I think going from Sly to Infamous, risky move. Going from Infamous to a game like Ghost of Tsushima, risky move. Take that over to Guerrilla. Going from Killzone to Horizon, risky move. Going from Horizon to really just more of Horizon Zero Dawn in a much longer time span feels less risky, even though it probably realistically isn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. Iteration in gaming has slowed down so much, and I don't exactly know where to pinpoint it at. But I just think variety is the way to go back. It's like AAA developers decided for the most part to be like, we'll just let indie games and AA games exist in that space, and we'll just be AAA, all really long, super big, wide open games. And it's just kind of like, Like I'm so glad that the Resident Evil games have continued to be like, fuck it, we're going to be like 8-hour games, and you're just going to enjoy the shit out of it.
They're just trying to keep you in their ecosystem. That's all it is.
Well, and it's weird that Capcom's solution for Resident Evil is to be like, yeah, it's Resident Evil. It just needs to be short but good, and maybe offer replayability. And then there are other massively successful franchises, Monster Hunter, which is play for 500 hours and keep fucking playing, you pig. Like that's their two options, and they're both wildly successful for different reasons.
Absolutely true.
Huh? Man. Well, I think the last piece we're going to do here is in relation to a question that we got. So with that in mind, Tom Henderson on a stream, as you may have heard his name before, he's been known for leaking a few things. He leaked the disk drive-less PlayStation 5, plenty of other stuff. But point being, in a stream that I would argue appears to have been on April 1st. So take that with literally every bit of grain of salt if you would. But by now you think he would have claimed it as April Fool's if that's what it was. Yeah. He talked about how PS5 Pro is coming up and how he'll be able to talk more about it in June, coming around there. But in the meantime, he says, I think I'll be able to talk about PS5 Pro the next couple of months because that's when a lot more people are going to be made aware of the console. There's also another piece of Sony hardware that will be released before the Pro that I'm more likely to talk about very soon, so definitely stay tuned. And of course, this got the rumor mills a-churning. Everyone had an answer for what this piece of technology was going to be. And as our question comes, Chris.
Read me that question, baby.
Says, with all these new handhelds that are being announced and released, assuming Sony's new tech Tom Henderson is talking about isn't a handheld, is PlayStation making a mistake by not investing in that market, especially when you see the competitors, Nintendo with Switch and Xbox, basically putting xCloud on all of these new handhelds? And just for context around this, clearly the Steam Deck is one of the competitors that we're talking about here, and then if I remember, it's Asus that just announced that they're going to be doing a new, or Asus, however you pronounce that, is going to be doing their own version of a Steam Deck like thing. I think some of the others have already come out and done similar pieces of tech. So with that, Chris,
Brett.
If this is not a handheld, do you think it's a mistake for Sony?
It's a hard question because it still just depends on what it is. Like, he was pretty vague. This could just be a peripheral for PSVR, right? Like, it could just be the gun peripheral. Like, we don't know.
Clearly, it's hardware, but that is pretty broad. Like, we know it's not a game. It has to be some kind of piece of tech. But yeah, it could arguably anything. Now, the way he chose to talk about it definitely sounds like it's something more than that. But at the end of the day, you're right. It could just be that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jeff Grubb today was saying that he had only heard rumors of a cloud streaming device, and that seems like the most likely thing. I still think the ideal one would be like PS4 level power, so you could play PS4 games on it with streaming of PS5. So that's what I would hope for. But a cloud device akin to the Steam Deck makes a lot of sense.
So I think that's an interesting way to view it, because one of the ways to look at this question is that there's the Steam Deck, which is a better example of kind of what you're talking about, where it's not about playing games made exclusively for that system. It's about playing games made for elsewhere on that system.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like I think
Switch exists. Go ahead.
Well, I think of the use case for it, right? And the use case is, hey, I'm working a overnight, building takeover for a high school, and I don't have to work for 90% of my shifts. So I'm going to bring my Sony deck with me and knock out Batman Arkham City Riddler challenges. Like, that's the best use for it, right? Like, I don't want Sony to have to be like, oh, here's the PS Vita 2 game, Uncharted Golden Abyss 2. Like, that doesn't seem, like a great use of their time, especially juggling PC, PS5, VR, PS4, and, mobile. So, just let me play my PS5 games on the go. I wish it wasn't cloud streaming, since that still doesn't work very well on PS Plus. But other than that, like, that seems like a great use of a handheld dev time.
See, and I get where you're coming from. And where I was going with this earlier is like the flip side of that is the Switch, which is a classic handheld. It's you buy the Switch to play games only available on the Switch, and maybe some of your third-party games you enjoy on the go, like Skyrim or Diablo or whatever it be, right? And that's happening significantly less because none of the new third-party can really go to Switch because the Switch isn't really powerful enough for it. There's a few odd games here and there, but for the most part, it's true that modern third parties not hitting Switch. So when you look at those two different things, like Xbox is doing the same thing, right? Xbox doesn't need to make a cloud, doesn't need to make a handheld, because bam, all their games are available on handheld. So if Sony's focus, like they're doing with the Backbone peripheral, right, is just, hey, you can remote play from your phone. You can put the Backbone onto your system and use your phone as a device and play the games with PlayStation buttons, blah, blah, blah. How is that not the same as what Xbox is doing? And that's a genuine question there. It's like, if it's not a handheld, well, why does that matter? Sony can still follow Xbox's lead by doing the exact same thing sans a handheld. Conversely, Sony could follow Steam Deck's lead and say, we're putting the piece out. Here's the piece of hardware that we're putting out, but we're not making anything exclusive for it. You're buying the hardware strictly to interact with your existing library. And that's where I come into the thing of the same question exists for everyone. So if Valve sees it as valuable to have the Steam Deck, ostensibly Sony would see the value of having a comparable tech for the PlayStation ecosystem, because Valve only makes money off of the hardware itself, probably on a razor thin margin, but a little bit, and then hopefully getting more people to buy Steam games through that. So Sony would only make razor thin margin on the handheld itself, and then be like, okay, now we're going to have a one more way for people to interact with the PlayStation ecosystem. I don't know that either of them are the right or wrong answer. Like, playing my Vita this week, I love it. I adore it, and I love it that there's a lot of games I'm getting to play that way. And I do love a lot of the exclusives made for it. But I just don't know that Sony sees the value in going that way. And if they don't see the value in going that way, why not just let people keep doing the phone thing? The only answer I can really give is that someone like in Chris's situation, right, is that you don't want to kill your phone, or you don't want to have your phone taken up by a game. So maybe you'd be willing to shell out $300 or $400, $350 for a PlayStation dedicated handheld with its own battery and maybe its own ability to be connected. Bam, there you are. I don't know. You're muted, Chris.
Of course, I'm muted. I'm always muted. Yeah, I mean, I've never understood it on the phone. Like, it was cool. Like, I remember I used to, at my old job, I would load up like Remote Play Slay the Spire, and me and my boss would like take turns like playing games. But other than that, like, I don't see a use for it. And it's still, especially with PS Now, it's like, all right, I gotta pop on, and then I got a text, so now I have to. It shuts down the game, so I have to re-log in. By the time I re-log in, the text has been responded to, which means I'm now quitting again to respond. It never felt to me like a logical way to play. And to be quite clear, I've never played games that way, other than those small sessions. So I can't tell you if what I just said is actually how it works, but that's how I'd imagine it works. Because of my little bit of time, you leave that PS Now setting or area, and it's starting over. So, what can you do?
Yeah, I don't know. I think part of it's just, you look at like for comparison's sake, right? The Vita screen size feels fine. And I think about, okay, so the Vita screen size, if I'm remembering right, is 5 inches. And then I look at what my phone is. And yeah, my phone's like a considerable chunk bigger. Right. So it's not screen size, that's the thing. I just think part of it is that if I'm going to have to carry around the peripheral, like the backbone,
yeah,
it feels like, why wouldn't I just go to a controller? And if I'm carrying a controller, why wouldn't I just carry a device with its own screen and its own battery and its own everything? And then I don't have to worry about my phone dying in the middle of the night because I was bored, wanted to play games, but I didn't have any other way to do it. So I'm a big fan of dedicated hardware for dedicated purposes. People used to be like, well, the phone's going to be able to do everything. Well, unless they completely reimagine the way batteries work and find some new crazy battery tech that can handle you streaming games on your phone for 8 hours a day and then still keep a charge for the rest of the day for your other menial shit, there's no way. It's just not going to happen. Because like when I spend a day watching a lot of YouTube or listening to a lot of music on my phone's dead by the time I'm going to sleep. And that's a significantly less powerful required, So I don't know. I don't think it's a mistake personally. I would love to see Sony do it. And there's that part of me that thinks if they do it, the main reason they'd want to do it is because of exclusive things. But the problem is that there's success stories on both sides. Which side do they choose to tap into?
Right.
The one that they ventured in before and had some success in, or the one they've not ventured in really at all that they might find success in? I don't know. I guess the answer is they could always do a bit of both. A dedicated handheld that can also stream all your games.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. Like,
I mean, that's what the Vita is, though. If you think about what the Vita was, it's just too early for the tech.
Right. Exactly.
Because the Switch is just probably the ideal version of Vita. More or less. And actually, I don't say that completely. I think the ideal version of Vita is being able to play on the PS5, a dedicated system, and is be able to tell your PS5, hey, I'm leaving the house, throw my game, every bit of it, where I'm at and everything, over to this little device so I can keep playing without skipping a beat. That is the actual... That was the vision they tried selling, and it never quite worked.
Well, that's what you're going to get in your Honda PS5 car.
That'd actually be kind of interesting, though. Like if you could be like, "Hey, I'm playing Baldur's Gate. Can you throw my session over onto the Honda real quick?" Why not? Why not? We will see. Man, this storm here is kind of getting wild. So I hope that none of this is picking up on the mic. But if it is, we work around it. All right. With that said, I think we were at the end of all the news. This pretty light week, so we're going to wrap up with just a few questions and then call this episode of quits. So, Chris, 2 more questions for you. First one from Yuna: have you ever had a game where you found a setting in a game right as you were getting close to the end? It does not have to be like this changes the whole game, but could be one that you wish you just discovered hours earlier to make the experience better. You're muted.
Sorry. Try not to sneeze into the mic and cough in the mic, so I mute a lot. But no, my answer is no, I can't think of one. I mean, I guess the biggest thing is like MLB's PCI like makes pitching and the PCI makes hitting a lot more controlled by the user, and the PCI makes hitting a lot more controlled by the user. This is brutal to listen to. I apologize to the audience. But the pinpoint pitching makes pitching a lot better for me as the player. So it makes sense to me. Like, it made sense to me at the end of like 22, where I was playing with just the base settings. And now I've learned that part and gotten decent with it in 22. So now I'm using it. I've used it forever since then. So I just think that might be the only example I can think of, is finding that mechanic and getting used to it. But it definitely didn't make the game easier. It made it significantly harder. But I'm better at the game for having learned it.
Well, did it make the experience better? Not necessarily easier, but better.
It made the game significantly harder. So
if you enjoy a challenge, it was better.
Right. If you want to know for sure, like that's the thing with MLB. It's like, before it was like, okay, I hold the up button, it means I'm going to swing in the upper part, and I might hit it, I might not. Now it's like, when I hit a perfect home run, I did that shit. So it does improve the game experience to that degree. Especially when you play on harder difficulties. Whew.
I think the one I found recently that, and this is a recent example of it, is whenever I was doing Sonic Frontiers on PS5, I've gotten so used to most PS5 games just automatically being in performance mode that I thought, well, something's going on, and I guess this game is just doesn't have a performance mode. I wasn't really sure what was going on, so I just never even bothered looking. I was having a good time playing the game. I just kept playing it. And on the last island, I finally decided to go in there and said, wait a minute. And I turned on the performance mode, and it was night and day difference. I was like, man, I wish I'd have done the whole game this way, because I can see the responsiveness of the game's already here. I think the other thing is kind of like Chris said, where there's occasional times in my life where I can think of games where I was playing it, and it's like I learned of a mechanic that was either hidden or not really communicated. And then you're just kind of like, oh, shit, here I am at the end of the game, and I just learned that you can perfect parry. And it's like, well, shit, I wish I'd have known that throughout the rest of this game. And there was a recent example I can't think of. I wish I could, but it was a mechanic I learned right at the end of the game. And I was like, well, that doesn't do me much good now, but I wish I had known about it.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. Like I said, it's just, I guess I'm one of those people who tends to like check what I can do in games personally. So I've never been like, oh, I guess maybe like FOV and Destiny might be the biggest thing I can think of. Honestly.
Boy, FOV and Destiny is game changing.
Huge.
Very much so. All right. Good question. Appreciate it. Jehudi MD, one of our patrons, he says, do you have travel destinations that you would like to go to someday? Why those specific places?
For me, it's Japan's huge. I'd like to see like Normandy. I'd love to go visit. I mean, I've been to a lot of places. Like, I really like Portugal. I'm from there, so I would go there. My dad won't let us go to Puerto Rico, so maybe there would be somewhere I'd like to go.
So why won't your dad let you go to Puerto Rico?
I don't know. He just refuses to go back.
Hey, I mean,
fine, whatever. I don't need to go to Puerto Rico. I'm very much someone who like, it's hard for me to pick one because there's places I want to go, like Japan, like New Zealand. That would be cool. Even like somewhere like going on a safari in Africa. But I'm one of those people, like, I want to go somewhere once and then go somewhere else. Like, my mom's like, oh, let's go to Aruba. And she's gone to Aruba like 4 times. It's like, why don't you go somewhere else? Like, you've been there. Like, why are you going back? I don't get it.
We just talked about it.
Yeah.
Aruba is her double bacon cheeseburger.
Fair argument, but also bad argument, because The Caribbean's the Caribbean. Go to a different island, and you're going to get the same experience. Hey, is there a sun in the sky? You're good. The beach is still the beach. Ocean's the ocean. Like,
yeah, but it's still the fact that it's just an unknown quantity, right? It gives you that feeling of comfort of being like, well, because vacation's not cheap either. It's the same thing. You feel the risk of, what if I go here and I hate it? But I could just go to Aruba.
And that's
I've been there.
too.
I enjoyed it.
I went to Lake George once. It was the worst vacation I've ever been on. But I can say I went to Lake George. Like, I would rather be like, oh, I've been to Turks and Caicos and Thailand and the Bahamas. So, oh yeah, I've been to Aruba like 16 times. Like, okay, fucking cool. Why don't you just move there, dickhead?
See, that's where I kind of have like a balance thing here where going back to me feeling like, I guess I didn't travel a lot when I was young because of the fact that we didn't have a lot of money. So we did occasionally, right? Like we went to Alabama for the beach one time. And then we went to, or Mississippi rather, that's what it was. And then we went to South Carolina. Yeah. To go and visit where my brother was born on a military base for his birthday.
Nice.
And then I went to Hawaii on my 18th birthday / graduation present because I was born in Hawaii. So
fuck yeah.
I've gone to those places and I really do like them. And I do want to take like my wife back to Hawaii, but probably a different island, right? Do something like you said, familiar but different, kind of get that double side there. But you know, it's like where I live, I think about like when you want a short weekend away, I kind of have that. It's like, I love Hot Springs, place close to us. And whenever you come down, I think it'd be cool to take you, but
yeah.
Super, super hot water. It's really wild. Like there's just a natural spring of water pumping out of the ground and it's almost hot enough to burn you. It's really wild.
That's pretty cool.
And it's very clean water. And so they have these fountains that you can go to, and they just let everyone in the city just go to the fountains and fill their bottles up with water, like big jugs if you want. Take it home, let it cool down. You got crystal clean spring water.
Dude, hell yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. And the mountains are really pretty there. They have bathhouses where they pull water directly out of the hot spring into the bath for you, and you can soak in it and steam in it. And that's where like Al Capone and people hung out. It's a really interesting place, but it's close, it's familiar, it's cheap. It's like 2 hours away. Then there's Dallas, 3 hours away, Shreveport, an hour away. And you kind of get in this thing where it's like you find yourself going to those places a lot because it's like the escape from here. But I have so many places I want to go to just to see something different. Because like I've never left the country. I mean, I guess like I've left the contiguous states since I went to Hawaii. But like I kind of want to go to anywhere in England just to start and just go around and stay, like travel like you would here in the States. So like I'm in Arkansas one day, I'm in Texas the next, I'm in Oklahoma the next, I'm in Colorado. It's like you can kind of make that little path or whatever. I want to just do that there. Be like, today I'm in England, like, you know, I'm in the UK, and then now I'm in Germany, and now I'm over here, and now like that seems like a cool idea.
Yeah, I mean that's why backpacking in Europe is so popular, because I mean the whole of Europe can fit into Texas, so you can definitely do it. And I'd love to do that stuff. Like, you know, I very much want to go to Sweden for no other reason to see if all the movies are true. You know, stuff like that. Like Sweden's definitely a place I'd like to go. There's places where it's just like shit just looks cool. You know, like they've got like that Pebble Beach in America where I don't know exactly where it is, but all the pebbles are like hot pink and like light yellow and all this cool ass colors. I'm like, I want to fucking go there.
Yeah,
shit looks cool as hell.
I want to go like the Dead Sea. Why not?
Oh, that would be sick. Cool. Just float in the water.
Yeah, dude, I want to go. This is where I think me and my wife will probably, I don't know if it'll ever happen. I want to go to Australia. Like, it seems, outside looking in, the way they portray it seems like it's supposed to be terrifying, but it looks incredibly interesting to me. So I'm I'd go to Australia.
I got no interest in fucking with those big ass spiders. I ain't going over there.
Well, you talked about wanting to go to New Zealand. You're just a few miles away.
Yeah,
it's not a few. It's but you know what I mean.
It's a while, but
geographically pretty close.
You ain't wrong. But like New Zealand's like last on my list because of the big ass spiders. Like fuck that shit. But if you were like, hey Chris, like I'm giving you we get super popular. Like I'm giving you a monthly bonus of plane tickets anywhere you want to go for being a great host of this podcast. Like you could pay for a trip to New Zealand, but if I'm paying, you know, I'm going to Japan.
Yeah, Japan's on my list too. And really talking about it, it's like the cultural aspects. And it's funny because going back to the games I was playing, I was thinking about this earlier and didn't bring it up. But Reverie is like a Zelda-like that takes place in New Zealand.
That's cool.
And Chia is a Zelda-like in some ways that takes place in a fictional version of New Caledonia. The thing that's a little different between them and why I appreciate it is where I was going with the travel part of this is that I want to travel and view different cultures and be ingratiated in different cultures. But then whenever that goes into gaming, I think Reverie does it in a much better way. It just ties all these things about the area that it's familiar with and uses its folklore to influence the story and collecting feathers for the wildlife stuff that's going on there, telling stories. I think that's a cool use of that. Having your main weapon be a cricket bat. It's just like it's having fun with that while still being fun as a game without getting it in its way. Whereas I feel like Chia is a really cool game and it's really fun and it's really charming in a lot of ways. But sometimes it tries so hard to touch on these little cultural aspects and being, hey, I'm going to teach you something about our culture that it kind of feels up its own ass a little bit. And you're like, and you're like, it's just a bit much. Like going one place, singing a song, doing a rhythm game, and then running somewhere else, and then doing a song and doing the rhythm mini game, and then going somewhere else and doing a song and doing the rhythm mini game. It's like, I get it, man. Y'all's people make cool music that's varied and has interesting stuff, but it's like, it's okay if I'm not constantly learning about New Caledonia's ways. Like you can ingratiate me in a way that doesn't feel as heavy-handed. So that's just something that came to mind.
I'm there with you on that.
Did you play Chia at all?
I did. And maybe it's going to make me sound bad, but part of the reason I fell off was I did feel it was up his own ass. And like I did that first thing where you're playing music and I'm like, I just don't like this. And I liked the gameplay of it, but I was just kind of like, I'd almost just rather go play Immortals or Zelda.
Well, and I find the game most interesting when it's just letting me exist in that same type of world and get quests in that world and talk to people and see the way that different people live and these different views. And even when it gets kind of crazy and uses some of its folklore stuff to inspire the less realistic aspects of the game world, like some of the odd supernatural elements and this stuff going on is all really cool. Like Mayavora as a bad guy is actually really cool, and what he's doing is really interesting. But it's like the fact that I have to filter all that through the game being really heavy-handed is unfortunate. And I really like that Reverie had a lot of the same feel of like, hey, we're going to steep you in our culture, but we're just going to let you run around in it and kind of do what you want to within it, instead of constantly being like, let me take control away from you, and here you are.
Yeah.
It's weird. But yeah, I want to go just see a bunch of different cultures. And do you find that you're more driven to travel more often, at least, from things in nature more so than cities? Or do you think it's a pretty healthy mix?
I think it's nature. Because for me, like a lot of the stuff I really want to see is like mountain ranges and cool vistas. You know, sure. I think that's a lot cooler than like, oh, I saw this brown building, but it was in Japan. Like, that's not interesting. But sure. Like seeing, I don't know, a forest, you know, maybe not pulling a Logan Paul and filming in them, but, you know, going to see some of the nature around there would be really neat. So that to me is it. You know, you can get me with like what, you know, those Instagram montages of cool ass landscapes. Like I'll go on vacation based off those, you know, like that.
Yeah, sure. I think I'm a healthy mix of both, because there's a lot of that's a type of nature I feel like I've never seen. Like I've never seen a jungle environment with my own eyes, and I think that sounds cool. Like I'd want to see that. What does that look like? How does that feel? Like, you know, what does the Grand Canyon feel like to be around? Like you see representations of it all over the place, but like what does it feel like to stand in that openness and see all that?
It reminds me of like I was listening to another podcast, and one of the guys was like, you know, I don't need to travel, I just have the internet. And I'm like, that's fucking insane, dude. That's not the same. Like it's not the same like seeing I don't know, the redwood forest versus Googling it.
Yeah,
Like,
no. As someone who went to San Francisco and then went and saw it, it was sick.
yeah,
Way
absolutely.
different.
Like it's a completely
Way
different
different.
experience. That's why, like, and the thing is, it's for the best and for the worst, right? Because you see the same Instagram videos I'm talking about; those are like specifically shot to be put on Instagram, where oh, this really great place has nobody swimming in this wonderful water, and then the reality is like it's full of fucking fat Americans, like like it's just typical, and
Yeah, no, you're right. I think the good and bad of traveling across the board is like we went to San Francisco, of course, and it was really cool. But it's like for as much as I fell in love with aspects of San Francisco, I fell out of love with so many other aspects, like the
right.
crazy amount of homeless
Mm-hmm.
and just how the traffic was just bonkers.
Oh yeah.
And it's like it was really cool that you could basically walk within pretty much anywhere reasonably. That was a nice element, and it's very different from where I'm at, where like when you visited, I think you even noted how everything feels really spread out
Yeah.
in comparison. Like I don't know how big like square square acres or however you want to say, like I don't know how big of a landmass Texarkana is in comparison to like anywhere in Connecticut, but it feels like this is a really big footprint. Like maybe our city is not as highly populated or as densely populated, but our city is very pushed out considering the population we do have.
Yeah.
And that's kind of different. So it was interesting, but yeah, you're also like, yeah, but that place is kind of crazy and it's rife with a bunch of issues.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, sometimes the illusion is better than actually being there too. Like, I
I
remember
think the cool part is the mix.
yeah, because I remember my brother telling me like he really wanted. They went to L.A. He was like, I was so excited to see the Hollywood Walk of Shame or the Hollywood Stars or whatever. And he was like,
Yeah.
we went there and there was just poop all over the floor. And he's like, this wasn't fun. And I'm like, yeah, like I don't. So
yeah, walking through San Fran, you just, and this has been years ago. This is 2017, 2018. We're walking through and you're like, oh, this is cool. This is really pretty. There's a bunch of hills. My legs are starting to hurt, but I'm cool. I'm into it. And then you're like, that is piss. That's the air is piss right now. What is going on? And then you're like, oh, that's shit. The air is shit right now. What is this? And then you keep walking. You're like, oh, I guess it was just that block. And then you keep going, and 2 blocks down, you look down. There's tents everywhere. Piss. And I'm not talking on them. Right? They're homeless, and that sucks. But it's just like it does mean that you have to take San Francisco for what it is, the good and the bad aspects of it, and just kind of roll them together and be like, well, it was an experience that was fun. Going back to the nature thing, like I often find that nature pulls me in, but I also think it's that the problem that I have within America is like whenever I went and visited Boston, it kind of just didn't feel that different than some of the older cities that are around us because the architecture is all roughly a similar age. And so it's like, oh yeah, I've seen that. Like, yeah, it's cool. It's an old church, but it's like those aren't that crazy around here. But then like you go to somewhere like London where you have a very specific architectural style that's hundreds of years older, than anything we have standing here. And it's like, oh, that's cool. Like, yeah, the Eiffel Tower, that's fucking sick.
I had that same experience when I went down to Texas last year, where I think I said it to you. I was like, I don't know why, but I expected this to look different than what I'm used to.
And it just looks like the busy metropolitan area of your city, of your area, right?
It's like traveling over there and being like, oh, this is nothing different outside.
Dude, downtown Boston looked like downtown Dallas, verbatim. I couldn't believe it. I was like, what the fuck is going on? I flew hours
to go home
to go to the same place. Like it wasn't until we hit the snow where I was like, okay, yeah, now we're at least somewhere different. It doesn't snow in Texas. And when it does, heaven beware.
Yeah, you're all dying.
Yeah. It's pretty wild.
Me.
There's a lot of places I want to go. But
cities are just not that interesting. Like I went to Ohio, and I apologize if anyone is from Ohio, but Cleveland was the worst place I've ever been in my life. And we were excited to go because we went to opening day, and there was like one or 2 hours where I'm like, oh, this is really cool. And then you're walking around like, oh, this city fucking sucks. I'm sorry. Like I know I'm sure there's someone in our audience who's like, oh, I love Cleveland. Your city fucking sucks. I'm sorry. Like, do something. The most interesting thing I did in Cleveland was eat at a Chinese restaurant. I'm sorry. Like, Cleveland was not a good. Less talking shit about the city, but more just in general. Like, that's cities for me. It's like, okay, this is great. It smells, and I don't want to be here. Like, you know.
Well, you kind of touched on my thing. I like the idea of visiting, like, not necessarily just dead out in the middle of nowhere, but like small towns within areas. Like, that's cool. Mm-hmm. Like, I would want to go to like a small Japanese town and see like the farms and the stuff and kind of be like, oh, okay, yeah, this is kind of what rural Japan feels like. Like, what is that in comparison to rural America? And how does, and you know, there's parts of America I haven't been to. Like, how is rural South Dakota compared to rural Arkansas? I'm sure it's actually quite a bit different. Fucking cornfields everywhere.
For sure.
But point being is that
go to
that's
Alaska.
the thing that kind of drives you, you know? Yeah, no, Alaska seems cool as hell. I want to go. Hawaii was cool, but Hawaii was its most cool to me when I felt like I wasn't in the, like, okay, here's where tourists go.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's like when you're out and about and you feel like you're on an island, it's like, this is cool as hell.
Yeah, I'm with you. Nature over cities. Sorry to the cities team.
Well, in small warm towns. So I think that's what I also like about Hot Springs. Like, it's a fairly populated thing, but it's got like a cool booming downtown. Like, it doesn't feel like you're in a huge city. There's not like skyscrapers everywhere, you know?
Yeah. No, I get that.
So,
Brett, I'm feeling a little sexy right now.
You feeling a little sexy right now?
How you feel, but I feel like it's time for some sexiness into the podcast.
I think there's only one way to introduce sexiness into the podcast, Chris. Do you know how?
How is that?
Velvet's Corner. Oh, by slipping away into Velvet's Corner. Oh, put your boners away now, guys.
I can't.
Oh, you got to flick it up into the waistband.
Too big.
So, okay, Chris.
That's all
Calm down.
Is to have a third nipple hanging out of my shirt.
Velvet comes in with a follow-up question to our episode 300 question.
Oh.
He says, Shuhei was thrilled with the meal Chris cooked for him last week and decided you deserve a reward. But he also heard about Brett's backroom shenanigans and was furious. So he decided your reward would be a tour of any PlayStation studio and a peek at what they're currently working on. And as punishment, you must wear a sign around your neck while viewing the tour. What's written on the sign will be decided by each other and can say anything. So, what game studio will each of you pick? And what game are you hoping to see? And what will be written on each other's signs? Will you be kind or evil?
You go first.
Okay, so the studio I want to go see.
Okay.
This all plays into the bigger point here. I love them. I love so many of their games. I want to go visit Sucker Punch.
All right.
And then the question of being kind or evil comes into play because that sounds a lot like a morality system, baby. And you know what game I want to see? I want to see the next Infamous game. Okay. Even if it's not being made at Sucker Punch, I know that they would have a little bit of involvement. So even if it's just that I'm seeing what another studio is working on, there we are. Now, Chris, because of course, I chose my studio. You have to tell me what is going to be around my sign at said studio. So what does my punishment sign say at the studio? Will you be kind or evil to me? Will you be good Cole or bad Cole?
I'm going to be
will you sacrifice yourself or will you save humanity?
I'm going to be a mix, right?
Okay.
So the sign is going to say, I really want Infamous 3, right?
Okay.
That's what it's going to say. But then, like, I'm going to do, like, 2 hits of the enter button. And then under that, it's going to say, because everything else you guys have made is garbage.
Ooh. But wait, hold on.
Because it's a backwards compliment.
It is weird. Because also it's like, hey, I want Infamous 3, even though Infamous 1 and 2 were garbage.
No. See, it's meant to imply that the only thing they've done that you like is Infamous.
Was Infamous. Oh, that's not true. But that is a sufficiently kinda evil.
Yeah, I want you to be like uncomfortable, but clear, like almost like you're trying to be nice. So that's how I would go with it.
Fair point. Don't get me wrong. I'd be the first person to tell them that the decision-making process and how they chose to handle the morality system in Second Son was awful.
Yeah. You'd throw rocks at them?
I'll look Nate Fox in the face.
Yeah.
And I will say, Nate, never again.
So maybe that's what the sign will say. They'll just say, Nate, never again.
Hashtag Infamous 3.
Hashtag Infamous 3. I like that. In terms of mine, first off, let's go back to last week's Velvet Corner. I don't know if you saw in the Discord, but I really fucked up my answer to Velvet's Corner last week. Because the right answer in terms of game was to just do every meal based off Tokyo Jungle, and then I could have just done anything. I just want to make that clear for people not in our Discord, which again, link below. Join it. It's fun.
Here's a braised lion.
Yeah, here's some braised lion, some scorched tiger cat. Easy money.
Braised baboon.
Ooh.
That'd be it. Yeah, braised baboon.
Baboon butt burgers.
Hold on, are the buns the baboon ass, or is it like the meat?
They ain't got buns, son.
Or I know what we got. Okay. Here we are. It's like the KFC double down chicken sandwich where it's a piece of chicken and then some cheese and lettuce and then a piece of chicken. It's just baboon ass cheek, cheese and lettuce and bacon, and then baboon ass cheek. Baboon burgers, yeah.
I like it a lot. So the studio I would go to, does it have to be first party?
So it sounds like any PlayStation studio.
Okay, I want to be clear. My first pick is Deviation Games because I'm fascinated by that team.
Okay. But that's the one that Sony purchased?
No, that would be Haven.
Is it the one that Sony has
exclusive coming from them?
Okay. Yeah.
Their shooter studio. I just want to see what's going on over there. You know. But I think my answer is I'm going to Sony Bend and I'm beating them to a pulp until somebody greenlights Days Gone 2. I don't want to be on good terms with them. I just want them to make the game I want to play.
Okay, Chris. So Days Gone 2 is what you want to see?
Yes,
or technically it's what you want to will into existence?
Exactly. Days Gone 2 needs to happen.
I have a real tough question for you within this question.
Go for it.
Do you really want Days Gone 2 when none of the people that made Days Gone what it was are even at that studio? You know what I mean?
Listen,
the high-level people who directed and created and made that world are gone. Do you really want that?
My bold prediction is that they're doing Siphon Filter. So it doesn't seem to matter to that studio because I doubt any of those guys are there either. So,
well, a lot of them left at the same time because that was,
this is a total tangent. I think it's outrageously clear that Sony has Siphon Filter coming, right?
I don't know. It seems like why otherwise are they going through this
every single Siphon Filter game?
And really, yeah, it'd be different. Like if Resistance Retribution hits, then it may just be they're releasing every bin game. And if Retribution gets skipped and they just don't do it, and they're like, yeah, we're done, then I'm gonna be like, something's going on.
I'm just saying, how many more?
If you added all Siphon Filter games, and yeah, something's going on.
I mean. You and I both know that they've already made a Siphon Filter game very recently. But the point I'm making is how many more are they? How many more games do they have to release? One or two? No, I don't know how many more Siphon Filters there are. Because to me, it seems like they're pretty much on pace for the last game in the Siphon Filter series to come out. PlayStation Showcase, Sony Bend is making Siphon Filter 7. And then we move on from there.
Oh, fun. There's a leak in the house next door, apparently.
Oh, lucky you. So, yeah, give me what's my sign, Brett? Or what is on my sign? My sign is Scorpio.
Suck my deacon. Suck my deacon.
I mean, honestly, that I
really... That sounds like a fun sign, though. And I'm not trying to be mean to you, realistically. You know, like I don't want to be evil to you. So then the question is: are we being evil or kind to each other, or are we being evil or kind to the developers that have to witness the sign?
I feel
then
like
it depends on how you turn that message, right? Is it shameful towards us, or is it shameful towards them?
Yeah, I feel like it's got to be a thing where like you're uncomfortable wearing it, but it also makes them uncomfortable to really be good. Right? Like
so the project here is to be uncomfortable, not to be good or evil. It's just to make everyone uncomfortable.
Yeah, like I want you to get to a point, like with my shirt, I want you to get to a point in your studio tour where you feel the need to explain that I made the sign for you.
Yeah.
You know? You're like, listen, I know this shirt's weird. I didn't pick it.
That's going to be the funnier part if he comes back and says, well, you have to just bear responsibility for the sign.
That would be fair.
You can't shirk it off on someone else. Then I guess it's even more important for it to make everyone uncomfortable because you have to pretend you did it. There's so many dumb stuff that you could do. Man, that's fun. Nobody wants to have dripping ceilings in the rain.
Mm-mm.
Yay!
Only Sam Porter Bridges.
It's not my house, but it's someone's house, so that's unfortunate. Got to do some figuring out. Yeah, Sam Porter Bridges would want to be, throwing his own poop and all sorts of stuff. That's this kind of guy he is. He's an OG. Yeah, I feel good with I'm just gonna have fun. Your reward will be that you get to go see Studio Bend, though I don't think that you actually. I don't mean this in any way other than I think Days Gone is the only real title from them that you have any affinity toward. Is that right?
If I was giving like a serious like truly what I want to see, I would probably go to Haven.
Oh yeah, that'd be interesting.
Be like, what are you making? Explain. Please explain. Tell. What are you doing, Jade Raymond? You haven't put out a game since Assassin's Creed. What is going on?
Yeah, your sign then would be, did you kill Stadia? Hashtag Jade Raymond. Jade the Killer. Hashtag Jade the Killer.
It's just a sign that says hashtag
Are you
Stadia Truther, and it's just a picture of Jade Raymond with a big circle and a cross through it.
What's his name? The other dude, Phil Harris. Is that his name?
Yeah. Harrison, Phil Harrison.
Harrison, that's it. Yeah, Phil Harrison. Like the sign would be, "Are you and Phil Harrison in cahoots?" But I don't really think that's what it is. I'm very interested. I actually think Haven's a good answer because there's something that's fun about knowing that you'll get an answer to a mystery there. But you know
exactly.
what? If for some reason Sucker Punch just couldn't happen, right? My secondary backup answer is I'd go to Blue Point. I've always just been curious to see how Blue Point work. And I think the answer to what I want to see is not a particular game. I just want to see what they're choosing to make since it's not a remake. Like, what, in their opinion?
I mean, we all know what they're making, dog. We know what they're making. It's Bloodborne 2.
But Chris, in the reality, right, the world that we exist in, where they've at least said that the next game they're making is an original game, do you think that would? Hold on. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, do you really think that they would go as far to say they're working on an original project and have it be part of an IP that is not theirs? Do you think that would be their actual use? And it might be a valid answer. I think that there's plenty of reasonable expectation to go, if you work with an IP and you learn what makes it work so that you can remake it adequately, then you would have a good understanding to then build a new one from the ground up. I get where that answer comes from, but do you really think that's what it would be?
It's a hard question to answer because in my head the answer is no. Or in my heart the answer is no. But in my head the answer is I don't believe for a second a new IP will outsell Bloodborne 2.
Or even
2
take Bloodborne out of it. take Bloodborne out of it, a new IP is not guaranteed to sell any better than any IP that they could be making a follow-up for.
Exactly.
Now, that doesn't mean that they should, right? The other side of that is you'd think that was true. So you could argue that Killzone would sell better than an unknown Horizon IP. And clearly Horizon drastically outsold anything that ever happened from them.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird thing because I've always said on this show that I don't understand why you would buy a team made for remakes and then let them make their own game. I'm glad that they're getting the opportunity to expand their horizons and do that. But, that's like hiring me because I'm a chef and telling me that I'm in charge of an aquarium.
Fair
point. Like I could do the job, but that doesn't mean that's what I'm best for.
Yeah.
That's simple.
Right. Yeah. And that's why it just goes through. And my other question for them would just be, are you more than one team now? And is there still a remake happening and a new game? Or are y'all really going full ham on only a new game? Because it does feel a little weird to be like, Sony, we've only worked with you in the capacity of high quality remasters and remakes. As soon as you buy us, we're going to make you an original title. It's just, I don't think Sony would tell them no because they've clearly earned some respect from Sony and how well they've handled these games and typically how well their remasters and remakes sell and how well they review, which is a lot to be said. So, but with that said, Chris, I think we are to the point where we are closing out. Velvet's Corner. And that was 2 this episode, so I'm keeping my trajectory of going down by 1 per episode.
So that means you need like 3 more so that you can play it twice on the next one.
With that said, Chris, we need a community stake to give these fine people. Now, it's a slow news week, so there's not necessarily, we don't have to look at anything we have gone through, but I think there's some curiosity about seeing people's excitement for Konami coming back. Like, is that something that people really are excited to see, considering the way that they handled everything previously and left, or what? Or do you have another one that is in mind that you think would be a little more fun? Or it doesn't have to be anything to do with this week either.
I mean, that one's not bad. I guess for me, it's a matter of like, I guess the one I would like is, do you want to see Konami go back to the well, or are you hoping that they take the knowledge of their old IPs and make a new game?
Yeah, I got you.
Mm-hmm. So that's where I'm at. How do you feel about that one?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
All right, let's tighten it up. Should Konami go back to the well of their old classic IP, or should they invest in something new in their Osaka studio?
Yeah. Does their return to gaming also entail new IP or strictly legacy?
Return to creativity. But Brett, let me do some final announcements for the end of the show here. We got 2.
Oh, one of them. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, one of them what?
One of them is the fact that we never got to letting everyone know that I'm beating you.
Yeah, that was one of them, fucker. The first one is all of you invested in the trophy competition. It is about that time when I announce April's game. And for some reason, we've decided that Jedi Survivor will be the bonus game for April. So get that platinum first in the group. And congratulations, you have the equivalent of a jumping taco added to your list.
All right, what's our second here?
The second thing is, yes, an update on the Metacritic draft. In a shocking turn of events, I have a nice amount of points with 69, and nice. Brett has pulled into the lead with a 71 average. Now, for the record, for anyone wondering, these are all updated to the highest score on Metacritic. Brett is winning. I don't understand it, but Brett is winning. I don't understand how math works because I don't know how I'm losing right now. Brett, how are you feeling about your Metacritic draft? Feeling pretty good?
I'm feeling good because Diablo 4's beta, despite me not having played it, is being very favorably talked about.
Yep.
So I'm feeling very strong that will end up in the high 80s, at least mid 80s, but high 80s, hopefully low 90s if I'm very lucky. Hopefully it'll be my next Resident Evil / Dead Space remake and kind of put me in a really good spot. So that one's for picks. Sure. That's a really good pick. Of course, Sons of the Forest, the fact that it chose to forego releasing as a full release and instead just went early access means that it's very likely that it'll end up a 0. So I'm apprehensive. But my other thing is I think Pikmin 4, the more I kind of look around, and I'm not a big Pikmin fan, but people seem excited about the prospect. And I think people are going to be willing and open. And I think that game might be a surprise hit for me.
I like that. Man, my list is fucked because it's either going to be real good or real not good, right? Like Tears of the Kingdom, that's probably a 97.
Yeah, I'd say a 95 bare minimum.
Baldur's Gate, I'm betting high 90s. Spider-Man, I'm betting high 80s, low 90s. Lies of P, I'm betting 90s or 60s. Street Fighter, 7 to 8. Starfield, 9 to 6. And then Jedi Survivor is shaping up to be really good. My biggest worries,
I think you might have had a good choice there.
Yeah. My biggest worries are Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Suikoden 1 and 2 HD Remaster, Gate Rune, and the Dunin Unification Wars were picks. Those were decisions on my part. And I really should have taken Battle Network instead of Suikoden.
I think Rebirth is going to be the thing that gets you. I think it's going to be a 0. Now, unfortunately, you do have a 0 with The Wolf Among Us 2, and I have a 0, of course, with Lost Soul Aside.
Yeah.
I think the problem we're going to run into is that both of us are probably looking at another 0 with Sons of the Forest and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
Yeah. I think you got 2 more 0s coming, at least. That's what I say.
So Suicide Squad seems to be a 0. They haven't publicly announced it yet. They said that they were moving it to, they haven't publicly talked about shit.
No, they haven't said anything. It's just
all that's happened is a rumor said, hey, they're going to be moving the game back to later this year. And then somebody else was like, no, even further than that. And they're just being like, yeah, we're not saying anything.
Yeah, I think Suicide Squad was not the one I'm thinking of, but that's a good one. Assassin's Creed Mirage, I don't think is coming this year.
I don't know, man. The hubbub around the game still seems to be that it's coming this year. And those games tend to come in that very late sector of the year, that October, November window.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I saw that it might be getting delayed through like some rumor. And honestly, it makes a lot of sense. If you're thinking of the release window, like they delay it a month or two and you're fucked. So.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. If it delays at all, I'm fucked pretty much.
Yeah. So I think you potentially have 3 on your list that I could see being 0s. And to be fair, I haven't heard shit about Forza Motorsport.
Yeah, they've shown about it. They've shown stuff about it. So I'm feeling pretty good about Forza. I think racing games are in a good spot right now. Definitely that type of racing game. And I think since Gran Turismo is good competition, there's one that's released closely enough for them to kind of talk about it and compare it. I think it'll do well enough. Redfall is looking better than whenever I initially picked it to me. It's looking more exciting to me.
Nice. That's a pick.
So yeah, I don't know. I'm in a weird spot. I feel confident that Mirage will come out and it'll hit that mid 80s I'm looking for.
Okay. Are you going to be adding any games anytime soon? You still got to add 3.
Man, I don't know. Right now it's just there's nothing that's jumping out. That's kind of the problem I'm running to,
That was the same with me. I only picked up Metroid Prime because I knew it was a shoe-in 90 and I was right. So
yeah. Like, man, yeah, if something else shadow drops, then maybe.
All right.
I think the biggest thing I can say is that both of us are lucky that we weren't overly bullish on what was that crazy game we were talking about that was Saints Row-like that had all the weird actors in it?
Oh, Rocket City.
Yeah.
I almost picked that shit. Whew, that would have been awful.
Yeah.
But I still think I'm going to play it.
And I strictly mean for the competition's sake. Yeah, I am very curious how that game actually is.
Me too. I just want to see the story.
I mean, they have enough people in it, but that's kind of one of those indicators where when they start throwing all these crazy things at it, it starts to feel like maybe they knew they didn't have anything great on their hands, but they didn't want to undo work, and they're like, we got to make something happen, so let's just get a bunch of celebrity actors.
Yeah, we're trying to get it like memed into popularity, basically.
Like, we all saw how well Keanu Reeves helped Cyberpunk, which honestly is 100% true in terms of initial excitement. And I think Keanu even being in the game helped the fact that the initial game had issues. People were like, well, Keanu's still pretty damn cool in this. You're willing to roll with the punches. So.
Absolutely.
I think what I might do, and I have to look and see whether or not the DLC. I'll go. I'll see. It's weird. I want to wait and see what happens with Forbidden West, because my real thing is, I think I'm willing to add Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty.
Is that what you're doing?
Reviewed.
It's definitely going to get reviewed.
That was my thing, is I didn't know how they handled reviews, but I thought that I remembered The Witcher and Frozen Wilds, The Witcher DLCs and Frozen Wilds getting reviewed. If that's the case, then yes, I will go ahead and add Phantom Liberty to my list.
Let me check. I'll check for you. Let's see. Give me a Witcher 3 DLC name.
Blood and Wine.
Yep, it got reviewed. 91. So you're taking it. You want to take it?
I do want to take that.
As of April 4th, 2023, Brett has Cyberpunk. What did you call it? Phantom Liberty?
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me.
I think that's what it's called, right?
I'm adding it in. Cyberpunk.
Yeah, Phantom Liberty.
You have it. It's locked in. All right. So
bam.
That leaves both of us with 2 more picks for our benches.
And I will take this opportunity also to give a big shout out to Kevin Bacon Bits for being the person who makes sure that he keeps up. He takes a big weight off of our shoulders by keeping up with the trophy competition for us and giving everybody updates on where they are at the time.
Yes.
So as of right now, he still holds the first place bracket, but Kuno Guy came in late and he came in hot, and he is in second place, just barely above me. So there we are. I'm in third. I have scooted back. I've dropped down, and then we have some emo. So Josh, we have Blake, we have you, Chris, in sixth place somehow. I'm proud of you.
Thanks.
Bring the Pain in seventh. Aztec King 7, one of our other patrons, in eighth. Jordell in ninth. 10th is TT Dog 666, another patron. T Crames in the 11th, and Una in 12th. That is the current score listing. The competition's getting hot. We're in April. This year's flying by.
Oh my God.
We're gonna have to wait and see what happens.
So they really do. It's really true. Time flies when you get old, man. I woke up with a bad back and it's April already. God damn.
All right, Chris, let's round this episode off. If you liked what we did today, remember you can go and find us on social media. Give us a follow over on Twitter at Triangle SQRD. You can find us in the Facebook group Triangle Squared, a PlayStation podcast, or you can click the description, whether you're watching on YouTube, listening on podcast services. Jump into the Discord. We'd be glad to have you there. You can talk to us about day-to-day stuff, podcast discussions that we're having, be part of the trophy talk where we talk about all the trophies that we are getting as part of this competition, and everything else. If you are on a service that allows you to rate and review us, please consider doing so. Be a big help for us. If you think that there's someone in your life that would like the show, be like Sean One Neo, Mr. No Fate, and find a friend and tell them. Let them find the love that is this show. But with all of that said, it is time to thank our patrons who went over to patreon.com/Nartech and give as little as $1 per month to help support this show. It is a huge help for us, and we appreciate you greatly. So without further ado, we will be back next week for episode 302. Chris, thank you for joining me. And a shout out
to
Brett. Our patrons, Spencer, Brandon Edwards, Alex, Barry Rogers, Stingray X, It's a Sin to Win, a.k.a. Sean, Aztec King, Lechion69, The Lord Corgi, Salvador Garcia, Hammond Egger, Bailey Robertson, Mark Schutz, Cypher Primus, Kyle Grimm, Rude Days 93, Kevin Baconbits, Christopher, Danny Villalobos, Jehudi MD, No Fate, Josh Ayers, Derek Porter, Donovan Williams, Matthew Green, and Sean Sanderud. Thanks you all. See you next week.